from all-round top student to chief scientist. This video is purely for entertainment and does not infringe on copyrights or laws. The rights to the novel and image belong to the original author. We do not claim ownership. Don't like waiting and want to listen to this fanfic in full now? Subscribe to our Patreon, where you'll find the best fanfics. Chapter 126 Nobel Prize Boss Wants to See You, Seeking Monthly Tickets. The relationship between the energy storage function and the propagation velocity of the medium? Wow, I finally found someone whose research interests align with mine. Let me take a look at the abstract. However, after a quick glance at the abstract, Albert couldn't help but exclaim in surprise, "What? The propagation velocity of the medium can actually determine the energy storage function?" This, as someone who also studies the Navier-Stokes equations, he certainly understood the significance of this finding. While it might not shock the entire academic community, it would definitely cause a stir. It's no wonder the other party sent the paper to them. Mike, who was standing nearby, heard him and asked, "What's the matter?" The conclusions of this paper are very interesting. They are very inspiring for our study of the Navier-Stokes equations, Albert said, glancing at the author's name. The author's name is Lin? I feel like I've heard that name somewhere before. Lin, Mike said, hearing the name. I remember there's a mathematician in China who just proved the distribution law of Mersenne primes at the International Congress of Mathematicians in August. I heard he's quite young? No way, Albert was stunned, also remembering the incident. Such a major mathematical event wouldn't be unknown. The solution to the Mersenne prime distribution law and the proposal of Lin's conjecture were enough to ignite discussion throughout the mathematical community. Just like Sir Michael Adie's recent claim to have proved the Riemann hypothesis, which also sparked discussion in the academic community, both pure and applied mathematics communities were aware of the event, but ultimately, Sir Adie's success was clearly unsuccessful. Thinking of the young man from China, Albert wondered, are these two the same person? Isn't that Lin a number theorist? Why don't you just look at his profile? Michael said. Maybe he's also come over to study applied mathematics, Albert complied. When someone submits a paper, they need to identify themselves, and past achievements are obviously the best way to prove their claim. Albert exclaimed in amazement, it's really him. I didn't expect he could do this kind of research in applied mathematics. He felt a surge of envy for a moment. If only I had his talent, I'd be publishing mathematical papers and making a name for myself, not just sitting here as a small editor. Mike, standing beside him, said helplessly, come on, stop being envious. I still love my job. However, if my graduate advisor were here, he'd definitely criticize him for messing around. He'd be studying applied mathematics instead of pure mathematics. Albert laughed. Your professor has already broken off ties with you, a rebellious person. Don't even mention it. Mike shrugged nonchalantly. Okay, I'll take a look at his paper, figure out the formatting, and then get ready to have it reviewed by the professors on the editorial board. Albert said nothing more and got back to work. AML is indeed a journal renowned for its speed. A week later, Lin Xiao received a notification of acceptance, and AML will soon schedule publication. Meanwhile, he checked the paper's status on Arxiv and found it had already received over 80 downloads. This was clearly an astonishing number of downloads. He hadn't even published a paper yet, and it had already attracted so many downloads. Once it was published, countless more downloads from related researchers would likely follow. It seems this conclusion is quite intriguing, Lin Xiao thought in surprise. Otherwise, there obviously wouldn't be so many downloads. However, just then, his phone suddenly rang. He looked and saw it was academician Tang Qing. He was startled. What did academician Tang want to see him about? Could it be about some new developments in the project? So he answered the phone and said, Academician Tang, what can I do for you? Mr. Yang would like to see you, came academician Tang's voice, a mixture of surprise and sense. Lin Xiao was stunned. Mr. Yang? To see him? What Mr. Yang wanted to see him that was worthy of academician Tang Qing acting as a messenger. Suddenly, he remembered the scientist Yang Zhenning, who was well known in the world physics community but had a complicated reputation in the Chinese physics community, a former Nobel Prize winner in physics, and a top physicist who proposed the non-abelian gauge field theory and the law of parity non-conservation. He was a little surprised for a moment, even a little unsure, and asked, are you talking about a Mr. Yang? Yes, it's Mr. Yang Zhenning, Tang Qing said with emotion. When I was studying in the United States in the last century, I once attended a lecture by Mr. Yang. He also chatted with me at that time. Now so many years have passed, and he is over 90 years old and rarely sees people. But he just called me suddenly and said that he wanted to meet you. You must seize this opportunity." Lin Xiao was also a little surprised and excited. He couldn't help asking, "Why did Mr. Yang want to meet me?" "I don't know. Maybe he read your mathematical physics paper? Didn't you publish the paper on Arxiv? Then I shared it with other friends who study physics in our country a few days ago. Maybe Mr. Yang learned about it that way." Only then did Lin Xiao know why his downloads had reached more than 80. It must be related to Tang Qing's sharing. "Thank you very much. By the way, when will Mr. Yang see me? He'll visit our school in a week and give a lecture in the auditorium. Just come and join us." "He'll meet you after the lecture, I see," Lin Xiao said. "But he's over 90 now. Is he still in good health?" "Haha, don't worry about that. He's still very strong and occasionally attends lectures and other events," Tang Qing said with a smile. "That's good. Scientists like this are treasures for both China and all of humanity. Everyone wishes them continued health." Tang Qing then mentioned the time and place before hanging up. Lin Xiao put down the phone, feeling deeply moved. Even such a powerful figure wanted to see him. He hoped he would produce more results in the future, so that he could become a similarly powerful figure. Of course, in the eyes of many, he was already a powerful figure. He turned around and rubbed Mimi, who was resting on the table next to him. It always did this when Lin Xiao was researching at his desk. Meow the cat meowed, perhaps dissatisfied with Lin Xiao disturbing it, to express its emotion. "Mimi, give me strength, let me know how to prove the Goldbach conjecture, okay?" Meow. Mimi twisted her body, looking as if she didn't want to pay attention to him. Lin Xiao smiled and continued his research. In any case, it would be impossible for Mimi to stomp on the computer a few times like last time, and then find a paper that he had ignored before but could bring him a breakthrough inspiration. He didn't think this would happen twice. In this way, a week passed quietly. The news that Mr. Yang was coming to Shangjing University to give a report had already spread, and the auditorium of Shangjing University was already crowded. "Please give me a monthly ticket." Chapter 127 Questions in front of the entire audience. The Great Hall of Peking University is one of the most prestigious auditoriums in China and its most important gathering place. Many prominent figures have given speeches here. Over a century ago, Emperor Guangxu gave a speech here, as did Ke Yuanpei, Peking University's most renowned president. Many international dignitaries have also addressed the university in modern times. Today, however, a leading figure in both Chinese and international physics has arrived. Professor Yang Zhenning's prominent position in the physics community is undeniable. Many have read about him in textbooks and online, and his lectures have drawn a large number of Peking University students and faculty. Almost everyone wanted to see this Nobel Prize-winning physicist in person. Meanwhile, Lin Xiao finally arrived at the entrance. Finally, he exhaled. He had rushed from Yanbi Garden and nearly missed the bus. Arriving at the auditorium, he saw that every seat was already occupied, with many standing in the aisles. "Oh my God! Where do I sit?" Just then, his phone rang. It was Academician Tang. "Why are you here just now? Come over here." Lin Xiao was startled. He looked forward and saw Tang Qing standing in the front row, waving at him. He quickly ran over and saw an empty seat next to Tang Qing, clearly reserved for him. After taking his seat, he said sheepishly, "Sorry, I'm a little late. I'm here, it's almost time to start," Tang Qing said without hesitation, turning his gaze towards the stage. Sure enough, a few moments later, the host came on stage and, after a few brief remarks, welcomed Mr. Yang. Mr. Yang arrived, facing the audience, a smile on his age-marked face. Due to health reasons, he didn't stand to speak. Instead, a chair was provided for him, and he sat down and began to speak. "Hello, friends of Peking University. I'm Chen Yang. It's been over a decade since I last gave a lecture here. Coming here again now, I'm filled with emotion. A decade is a long time. Even though so much time has passed in my life, I still find it an unforgettable period." Professor Yang's speech was intimate, like a narrative, reminiscing about his past, and the audience listened attentively. However, Mr. Yang, a physicist after all, occasionally dabbled in technical terms. While the students from science and engineering fields could understand a few sentences, the liberal arts students were somewhat bewildered. Of course, Professor Yang avoided these situations as much as possible, striving to ensure everyone could understand. And so, time passed quickly. I haven't had much contact with Jin Zuzan. He's 11 years my senior, so he's considered a senior figure. His contributions to our country are something I admire. However, I did meet him after I returned to the mainland. That was the last time we met, and then he passed away. During that meeting, we discussed China's educational problems. Do you know a question he once raised? It's why don't our schools produce outstanding talents? The audience was stunned, but many in the room knew this question. It's quite well known in Chinese education circles. Elder Yang then continued, I've considered this question, but it's a broad one, not something that can be answered in a few words. However, until today, I suddenly realized that under our education system, a young talent has finally emerged who can be considered outstanding worldwide. Everyone was stunned by this. Who is this person? He was actually worthy of Elder Yang's special mention. Then, Elder Yang added, this young talent should be in the audience right now. I'd like to ask him a few questions. Everyone in the audience looked around. Who was this talent that even Mr. Yang was mentioning? Was he actually here? Meanwhile, Lin Xiao, sitting up front, was stunned. After hearing what Mr. Yang said, he couldn't help but mutter, no way. Academician Tang, standing next to him, was stunned. Thinking about who Mr. Yang was going to meet, it was obvious who he was going to talk about. Sure enough, Mr. Yang glanced towards the audience and said, Lin Xiao, are you in the audience? Oh, what? Lin Xiao couldn't help but fassip him. He actually had to call him. What was going on? Tang Qing, standing next to him, was also helpless. It seemed that Mr. Yang's optimism for Lin Xiao had exceeded his imagination. Stand up. This is your chance to make a name for yourself, he said, patting Lin Xiao on the shoulder and smiling. Lin Xiao was helpless. He didn't want such an opportunity. But he raised his hand and stood up. I'm here. As he stood, the eyes of the audience, over 2,000 in number, were fixed on him. The audience erupted in discussion and amazement. Is that Lin Xiao? Yes, that Lin Shen. So, Master Yang was talking about him? That's alright. If Master Yang was talking about anyone else, I wouldn't accept it. I accept Master Lin. Previously, they had been confused about who Master Yang was referring to, but upon learning it was Lin Xiao, everyone was relieved. There was no other way. If there was any young person whose academic prowess could impress these Peking University luminaries, it was Lin Xiao. At this moment, Master Yang, seated on the podium, noticed Lin Xiao standing up. Lin Xiao was sitting in the front row, not far from the stage, making him easy to spot. Seeing Lin Xiao standing up, Master Yang smiled and said, could someone please pass a microphone to Lin Xiao? Quickly, a staff member handed a microphone to Lin Xiao. Hello, Master Yang, Lin Xiao said. Hello, you're a very nice young man. Master Yang smiled and nodded at him. Haha, Lin Xiao, I've actually been following you for a long time. I also looked at the problem you solved this year about the infinite prime numbers of the Fibonacci sequence. Although I'm not a mathematician, I can still understand the method you used. Honestly, I've never seen a young person as talented as you in all the years I taught in the US in the last century. Thank you. Solving this problem was just a coincidence, Lin Xiao said modestly. Although it was a coincidence, sometimes it's inevitable. Professor Yang shook his head and asked, I came to you to ask you a few questions. First, what are you researching now? Well, I'm working with academician Tang Qing on global well-possedness in two-dimensional and compressible elastic dynamics. I'm also studying the Goldbach conjecture. Hearing Lin Xiao's answer, everyone in the room was once again amazed. Lin Xiao must have only been enrolled for less than 2 months? He'd only just enrolled, and he was already working on a project with an academician? Suddenly, everyone present, from freshmen to juniors and seniors, and even the graduate students, was filled with envy. It's true that comparing people makes you die, and comparing goods makes you throw them away. How could the gap be so huge? Those who knew what Lin Xiao was researching were somewhat astonished by the scope of his knowledge. Not content with mathematics, he had even ventured into physics. However, even more people were unaware of the subject when Lin Xiao later mentioned the Goldbach conjecture. Everyone was amazed. Lin Xiao was actually still working on the Goldbach conjecture? He had previously solved 2 world-class unsolved problems, and now he was tackling this one? However, no one questioned Lin Xiao's ability. None of the professors, lecturers, or students present had the right to question Lin Xiao. The only one who could question him was the elderly man sitting on the podium, questioning Lin Xiao. Clearly, Elder Yang did not question Lin Xiao, but offered his support. Very good, very good. That's what academic research is all about. You always have something to do, you have to challenge yourself step by step, and constantly push yourself to the limit. That's what I want to say to all the students here. Professor Yang nodded with a smile, then asked, that paper you're planning to publish in Applied Mathematics Express is called Relationship Between Energy Storage Function and Propagation Velocity in a Medium, right? Academician Chang shared it before, and I've also read it. I'm very optimistic about your future in physics. If you're tired of studying mathematics, why not try physics as a hobby? Professor Yang said with a smile. That's indeed my plan. I joined Academician Tang's research group because I developed an interest in physics. Of course, this achievement was also an accident, Lin Xiao said with a smile. Your accident is quite unexpected. Professor Yang shook his head with a smile. The audience once again felt the impact of the academic master's dimensionality reduction attack. When Professor Yang mentioned the Applied Mathematics Express, the professors, graduate students, and postdocs who studied mathematics and applied mathematics were all surprised. Wow, Lin Xiao published another paper in a top journal in applied mathematics? But then Lin Xiao said he only took up physics for fun, and that this result was an accident. At that moment, everyone present wanted to shout to Lin Xiao, Master Lin, please restrain your magical powers, stop trying to be so discouraging. Okay, time is limited, so let me ask you another question. What is your ideal? Then, Elder Yang skipped over the previous topic and asked this one. Lin Xiao was stunned. This question seemed familiar. It seemed like he had discussed this with a peer before. However, regarding his ideal, he could answer it without hesitation, explore the truth of the universe. Hearing Lin Xiao's answer, everyone nodded slightly, agreeing with his ideal. This ideal is something every researcher has harbored, but in the end, most of them are stumped. Breakthroughs in truth are often achieved by a few geniuses, like Newton and Einstein. Now, they could only hope that this young man before them could achieve a third miracle year for humanity. Elder Yang also smiled and nodded, praisingly saying, exploring the truth of the universe, very good. My previous research was precisely for this purpose. Although we don't know if the truth of the universe has an end, we only need to follow the path before us. So, as your senior on this path, I can only wish you good luck. Thank you, Lin Xiao said with a slight bow. Elder Yang then had no more questions. Lin Xiao returned the microphone to the staff member and sat back down. Elder Yang's speech continued, but no one would forget Lin Xiao's response, nor would they forget this exceptionally talented young man. Many wondered how far Lin Xiao could go on his ideal path. Thanks to Blue Cat and Gaokao Tavern for their 500 Kidian coins, thanks to Beta for their 200 Kidian coins, and thanks to fellow readers Kitty Xiangsha, Don't Want to Know, 13 Spices, Park Hu, and others for their 100 Kidian coins. Chapter 128, with Lin Xiao, there is no need to worry about top talents. Time passed quickly, and Professor Yang's speech concluded. Amidst applause, the crowd began to gather, and Professor Yang left the podium. Let's go. Professor Yang has gone to the nearby reception room. He should be waiting for you there. Tang Qing patted Lin Xiao on the shoulder. Okay, Lin Xiao nodded, then followed Tang Qing out of the room and into the nearby reception room. The reception room was quite large, and Professor Yang sat on one of the sofas. A group of people sat around him, all of whom had just attended the speech, the president of Peking University, various deans, and senior professors. Lin Xiao spotted Professor Suji among them. Student Lin Xiao, you're here. As Lin Xiao entered, everyone looked at him. Professor Yang smiled and nodded, but he didn't speak directly to him. Instead, he chatted with the university leaders nearby. Lin Xiao sat nearby, listening to the conversation. Professor Suji then walked up to him and said, still with a hint of surprise, you really have a huge surprise for me. Lin Xiao was stunned. What surprise? The paper you were going to publish in Applied Mathematics Express. I thought you were going to Academician Tang just to gain some experience, but you've quietly created such a big thing. Lin Xiao didn't know whether to laugh or cry. He said, it's mainly about the application of mathematics. If I were asked to study pure theoretical physics, I wouldn't understand. Don't be so modest, kid. I think our school will give you another bonus. Lin Xiao was stunned, then suddenly remembered that publishing in such a top journal can get you a bonus. This is great. I can afford to buy cat food for Mimi again. As for finding Mimi's owner? Because teacher Liu hadn't responded, Lin Xiao had almost forgotten about it. Then, academician Tang, standing nearby, smiled and said to Su Ji, "Old Su, don't underestimate Lin Xiao. With his math skills, he's top-notch in everything he studies." "That's true," Su Ji nodded with a smile. "Of all the math, physics, and chemistry, math comes first." With Lin Xiao's math prowess, it's not surprising that he could apply his knowledge to other subjects. Meanwhile, Professor Yang, presumably finished chatting with the others, stood up from the sofa, approached Lin Xiao, extended his right hand, and said with a smile, "Student Lin Xiao, I came directly to you during the presentation just now. Aren't you nervous?" "No, no." Hearing Professor Yang bring this up, Lin Xiao was flattered and quickly extended both hands to shake his. "Haha, that's good." Old Yang nodded, then said to the others, "I'd like to walk around the school alone with Lin Xiao and chat for a while." Everyone was startled by what Old Yang said, especially his secretary, who said, "I'd better follow you." Old Yang smiled, patted Lin Xiao, and said, "No need. Lin Xiao is a young man, so he should be able to take care of an old man like me." "Lin Xiao, isn't that right?" "Of course." Lin Xiao nodded with a smile. "That's right." Old Yang nodded, then said to his secretary, "That way you don't have to worry." "Well, okay." Seeing Old Yang's insistence, the secretary had no choice but to nod. Of course, he and several of Yang's bodyguards would follow later to prevent any problems. These bodyguards were not only responsible for protecting Old Yang, but also for preventing any sudden health problems and making it easier to get him to the hospital. Then, Lin Xiao helped Old Yang out of the reception room and left. Inside the reception room, Professor Yang's secretary, bodyguard, and others followed, keeping a distance of more than 10 meters between them. Other school leaders also followed behind, most of them wanting to chat with Professor Yang later, since it was a rare occasion for him to visit Shengjing University. However, looking at the old man and the young man walking ahead, they couldn't help but sigh with emotion. Peking University President Li Baoho said, "We are lucky to have such a student at our school." The others nodded in agreement. Indeed, considering Lin Xiao's achievements, when people look up his information in the future, the first thing they'll see is his degree from Shengjing University. As for which university Lin Xiao will attend in the future, that's a fact he graduated from, and that can't be changed. "By the way, Professor Su, how is Lin Xiao doing at your college now?" Li Baohu then asked Su Ji. "He's doing pretty well," Su Ji said with a smile. "He's working on a project with academician Tang Qing, the one Professor Yang just mentioned." "Yeah," Li Baohu nodded. "How is his life? And his classes?" "As for his living, the school has arranged for him to live in Yanbi Park. As for his classes, he's applied for exemptions from all the math classes, but he should still be taking the other foundational courses he can't exempt from." Li Baohu nodded, thought for a moment, and said, "Then make an exception for him. Let's exempt him from the ones he can't exempt from. We need to give young scholars more freedom and less restrictions, especially for someone like Lin Xiao. We shouldn't let him waste his time on undergraduate courses." Su Ji smiled when he heard Li Baohu say this. "I think he'd be happy." Li Baohu smiled and said nothing more. And so, Lin Xiao and Professor Yang walked in front, with the others following behind. As they walked across campus, the students around them were stunned. An old man and a young man walked in front, followed by a large group of people. Looking again, wasn't that their principal and even the dean of their college among them? They were actually following the old man and the young man in front? Who were they? "Is that Mr. Yang? He's the one who won the Nobel Prize in physics. Anyone good at physics is a freak." Mr. Yang is not a freak. He's not just good at it, he's transcendent. That's right. By the way, who's the boy next to him? It seems to be Lin Xiao. Who is Lin Xiao? Mr. Lin. Oh, I remember, the name Mr. Lin had become so ingrained in their minds that they had even forgotten his name. Wow, the originator of the Lin conjecture. Anyone good at math is a freak. Lin Xiao and Mr. Yang walked along the campus, their gazes occasionally darting towards them. They ignored their gazes and continued their conversation. Old Yang sighed and said, "You said you want to explore the truth of the universe, which is not easy. If it's not easy, then just break through it." Lin Xiao replied with a smile. "Haha, that's true. You are still young and I don't have much time left. You are in good health, so don't lose confidence in yourself. No one can say for sure about this kind of thing. Old Yang shook his head, then smiled and said, if you want to explore the truth, high-energy physics is a good direction. At least. We still have many questions about the basic composition of the world that have not been answered. Moreover, high-energy physics also needs mathematical experts like you. If I have the chance, I will try it, Lin Xiao said. Of course, I am still more interested in mathematics now. Although pure mathematics cannot be connected to reality, it is still a kind of cosmic truth. That's true, Old Yang smiled, then sighed. The various coincidences I encountered in the past made me feel that our world is highly unified by mathematics. Do you know fiber bundle theory? It was proposed by Chen Xingchen in the 1940s. It is knowledge of differential manifolds. As a result, decades later, I use this theory in my research on gauge field theory. Such coincidences make me always feel that this world is incredible. Yes, Lin Xiao nodded. Rather than a coincidence, it was the inevitable result of the world's unity. But it was precisely the frequent occurrence of such events that intensified his interest in the truth of the universe. And so, the old and the young walked slowly along the campus, chatting about a variety of topics, from academic discussions to practical matters. Lin Xiao, holding onto Elder Yang's arm, could sense the profound understanding of the world hidden within this no longer youthful figure. They reached Weiming Lake. Elder Yang patted Lin Xiao on the shoulder and said, "Okay, that's all. You're the most outstanding young person I've ever met. I wish you every success in achieving your dreams and believing in yourself." "Thank you, I will," Lin Xiao nodded. "Well, I'll keep an eye on you until the day I leave," Elder Yang said, waving to the group following behind. Soon, his secretary arrived. "Early, Mr. Yang. Well, I've finished talking to Lin Xiao. Any plans? Principal Li and the others have booked a hotel and would like to have dinner with you," the secretary said. "Then go ahead," Elder Yang nodded. At this moment, a nearby professor approached and said, "Professor Yang, we just received word from the academy that the CEPC project has been fully approved and they're determined to build it." "Yes, I understand. Let's build it," Professor Yang replied, his expression expressionless. However, many others, including Lin Xiao, were taken aback. CEPC is the Circular Electron-Positron Collider that China plans to build. As the name suggests, it's a particle collider. Previously, China had proposed spending hundreds of billions to build a large particle collider, and Professor Yang had expressed his opposition. Why hadn't he said anything now? Noticing everyone looking at him, Professor Yang smiled and said, "Why are you looking at me?" He patted Lin Xiao on the shoulder and said, "Won't it take nearly 10 years to complete?" Lin Xiao said he'll be researching high-energy physics in the future. "I believe that with him, we won't have to worry about having top talent." Hearing Professor Yang's words, everyone looked at Lin Xiao in disbelief. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelis. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 129, Online Reactions. My country's Nobel Prize in Physics recognizes its most outstanding talent, Lin Xiao, a light of Chinese education. Yang Henning, Lin Xiao can fill China's talent gap. Following Professor Yang's speech at Peking University, major Chinese media outlets reported on it, and word of his recognition of Lin Xiao as the most outstanding young person alive spread rapidly throughout China. Everyone was amazed at Professor Yang's optimism about Lin Xiao. His high praise of him truly surprised everyone. But this was Professor Yang, a Nobel Prize winner in physics, whose stature among physicists ranks second in history, surpassed only by first-tier figures like Newton and Einstein. There must be a reason for his high praise. At this moment, online discussion once again ignited heated discussion. I was wondering why Lin Shen disappeared in September. It turns out he was planning to make a big splash in October. I unconditionally agree with Professor Yang. Lin Shen is truly incredible. He's even started researching applied mathematics again. Applied Mathematics Express is incredible. If I could publish a paper there, I'd go straight to 985 University and become a professor. Is Lin Shen's name Lin Xiao? I thought he was just Lin Shen, you fake fan. You don't even know Lin Shen's name. Professor Yang's evaluation is spot on. Considering Lin Xiao's achievements at this age, I don't think anyone else in the world can compare. I hope he keeps working hard, struggle. Most netizens expressed positive feedback. After all, no matter what, Lin Xiao's performance was enough to impress most people, and most believed he deserved Professor Yang's recognition. Of course, some inevitably expressed disdain. An 18-year-old can receive such high praise. Be careful, you'll be slapped in the face in a few years. Everything else is fine with me, but Professor Yang thinks Lin Xiao can make great achievements in high-energy physics in the future? Don't be ridiculous. It's enough for a person to develop in one field. Why cross so many disciplines? To receive so much praise at such a young age? Who knows if he will become arrogant in the future? These responses, while occasionally seen, seemed a bit muted compared to the overwhelming recognition. Lin Xiao was obviously surprised by the online buzz. He didn't expect a mere presentation to garner so much attention. He couldn't help but marvel at Professor Yang's influence. Naturally, some media outlets wanted to interview him, but he declined them all. Regardless, he didn't want such distractions to disrupt his life. So, he continued his research every day, and of course, he also spent a considerable amount of time studying French. As for his research project, since he solved that problem, it has been making rapid progress, leaving him with virtually no work to do, and he was content to relax. Furthermore, after the lecture that day, Professor Su Ji asked if he wanted to be exempted from the courses he wasn't allowed to be exempted from. The president had directly approved this exemption, giving him more time to work on his project. Lin Xiao was naturally happy to accept, as this would allow him to devote more time to research. However, this situation felt like prematurely entering graduate school. Graduate students weren't like him, spending their days researching, nothing but research. Time slipped by. Is the academic community generally convinced that sieve methods have reached their limit? In his bedroom at Yanbi Garden, Lin Xiao leaned back on his bed, tablet in hand, browsing Math Overflow, an internationally renowned mathematics forum. It's considered the most professional website for mathematics, where you might find Princeton University professors sharing their knowledge, or even Fields medalists as regular visitors. If your contribution was insightful, you might even have a friendly exchange with a Fields medalist. At that moment, Lin Xiao was watching a discussion on the Goldbach conjecture. The sieve method is a technique used in prime number research. Chen Jingren, for example, used it when proving 1 plus 2, however, many discussants have argued that the sieve method alone is no longer sufficient to resolve the Goldbach conjecture. Chen Jingren has pushed it to its limits. A breakthrough in the Goldbach conjecture requires a different approach. For example, the proof of the weak Goldbach conjecture utilizes a combination of the circle method, the sieve method, and exponential methods. However, just then, he came across the online name of someone named Terence Tao. Seeing this name, Lin Xiao was stunned. Terence Tao, this name, sounds like Terence Tao? Many in the mathematical community are familiar with Terence Tao. A prodigy in mathematics, he participated in the EMO from the age of 10 to 12, winning bronze, silver, and gold medals. It's as if he's setting records, making him the youngest winner of all 3 medals. As he grew, he didn't lose himself in the crowd. Instead, he continued to achieve breakthroughs, winning the Fields Medal at the age of 31, a truly impressive accomplishment. Similarly, Terence Tao also made contributions to the Goldbach conjecture. In 2012, he proved that odd numbers can be written as the sum of 5 prime numbers, so it wasn't surprising to see his comments here. Lin Xiao couldn't help but pique his interest. The comments of this mathematician must have some value. He checked the posting time and saw it was a month ago, not too long ago, so he read Tao's comments. I think the sieve method can still be used. Here's a simple idea. 1 mi, p mis, s, 0, r, hum. That's quite interesting. Lin Xiao took a quick look and piqued his interest. He got up from the bed and moved to the table, taking out a pen and paper to start calculating. But before he could fully immerse himself, he heard the doorbell ring. Who's there? Lin Xiao couldn't help but feel puzzled. He didn't know many people in Beijing, so why would someone come looking for him? So he put down his pen for a moment and went to the door to open it. Standing outside were a little girl and an old man. The girl was the one who had discovered Mimi downstairs with him, and she lived upstairs. When she saw Lin Xiao open the door, she excitedly said, "Brother, I'm here to see the cat. This is my grandfather." Then she looked inside the room, clearly looking for Mimi. Seeing the little girl's expression, Lin Xiao naturally didn't refuse, opening the door and saying, "Come in." However, the little girl's grandfather suddenly said, Are you Lin Xiao? Lin Xiao was startled. Who are you? Professor Zhang Ren from the Department of Physics at Peking University, teaching high-energy physics. The old man, somewhat surprised, smiled and said, I didn't expect we'd live upstairs. I saw you at Professor Yang's lecture yesterday. You're so promising, young man. Lin Xiao smiled. So it's Professor Zhang. Thank you for the compliment. Please come in. Okay, sorry to bother you then. Zhang Ren smiled and nodded. Monthly votes please. Chapter 130, Terence Tao's Surprise. Entering the house, Lin Xiao carried Mimi, who was still sleeping on the bed, out and placed her on the sofa. The girl exclaimed, what a beautiful cat. Did you give her a bath, brother? Yeah. Lin Xiao smiled and nodded, then retrieved a cat toy from the side. He'd bought it a few days ago at the veterinary clinic. Teacher Liu had called him a few days earlier, and 2 weeks had passed without a trace of the owner, so he simply topped up 2,000 yuan and bought the cat a bunch of stuff, like scratching boards and climbing frames. However, the cat preferred to lie on his bed when he was in bed, or on his desk when he was at his desk. Ragdoll cats, after all, were the type that loved to cling to people. Watching the girl play with the cat, Lin Xiao finally sat down next to Zhang Ren and started chatting. Little girls like cats very much, Zhang Ren said with a smile. Yes, this girl wanted to have a cat before, but her grandmother and I are usually at school. Her grandmother is a professor at Guangzhou School of Management and we don't have time to have a cat. She is now a freshman in high school at number 101 middle school and usually only comes back on weekends, so it is impossible for her to have a cat. Then she just came back from school today and said she wanted to come to your house to see the cat. I was worried, so I followed her. So that's the case. Lin Xiao nodded. Then you really shouldn't have a cat. Just come to my house to see it when you have time in the future. Haha, I'm sorry to bother you later. It's okay. By the way, what's your sister's name? Lin Xiao suddenly remembered that he didn't even know the girl's name, and asked. Zhang Ren was stunned and said to the girl, Nanan, didn't you introduce yourself to Brother Lin? The girl turned around and said embarrassedly, oh, yeah, I forgot, Brother Lin. My name is Zhang Ranger. I'm 15 years old and a freshman in high school. And Grandpa, please don't call me by my nickname. I'm already in high school, you little girl. Zhang Ren pointed at his granddaughter and said with a smile, Grandpa has been calling you by your nickname for so long, and now you don't like it anymore. No, the girl pouted, looking spoiled. Then I'll call you Nanan, Nanan, Nanan. Zhang Ren didn't care that Lin Xiao was there, and he started bickering with his granddaughter. Looking at the grandfather and granddaughter, Lin Xiao couldn't help but smile. However, Zhang Ren didn't say much to his granddaughter, and soon moved on to other things. Although Mr. Yang hasn't said it directly, many people now think that Mr. Yang sees you as the future leader of high-energy physics in China. Do you feel any pressure? Not really. I just focus on my own research. I don't usually pay attention to that kind of stuff. That's a good attitude. But then it seems you're interested in high-energy physics, too. Of course I'm interested. Exploring the fundamental structure of the world is a fascinating subject. As I said, I hope to explore the truth of the universe, and I believe the fundamental composition of matter holds many of the answers I want to know, Lin Xiao said with a smile. High-energy physics, also known as particle physics, is, as the name suggests, the study of the physics of microscopic particles. As for why it's called high energy, it's naturally because this discipline is truly high energy. Research is primarily conducted using particle colliders. Of course, theory also plays a significant role. For example, the God particle predicted by the Higgs field was hypothesized based on theory. Later, the God particle was claimed to have been discovered by CERN in 2012. The CEPC, which China is planning to build, is also being built to better study the God particle. The energy generated each time they were activated was incredibly powerful, otherwise no one would have suspected that a particle collider could create a black hole. It's indeed a very interesting subject. If you're truly interested someday, I could take you to our Institute of High Energy Physics. The Shanghai Electron-Positron Collider is located there, Zhang Ren said with a smile. If I get the chance, I'll definitely go. Lin Xiao's eyes lit up. Seeing the collider in action firsthand was definitely a fantastic opportunity. Yes, Zhang Ren nodded, saying no more. Then, Lin Xiao joined Zhang Ranger in petting the cat. Half an hour later, Zhang Ranger reluctantly left. After seeing the two guests off, Lin Xiao reflected on what Zhang Ren had just said. High-energy physics? He wasn't ready to rush into that field right now. After all, high-energy physics was a cutting-edge discipline in the world. For now, he should focus on his Goldbach conjecture. Thinking of the Goldbach conjecture reminded him of Terence Tao's discussion of sieves, which he hadn't finished reading. So he returned to his bedroom and continued reading Terence Tao's messages on the forum. Soon, he had finished reading the entire process. However, it was clear that Tao hadn't completely figured it out, he had merely shared an idea. What remained at the end was a question: for all k3, let a and a be arbitrary sets of integers. For any set of integers r1, 2, 3, is it less than m, pj, page 1? Finally, here, I've encountered a difficult problem that I can't solve for now. If I can solve this, I believe we can continue and complete this new sieve method. Perhaps we can get closer to the ultimate secret of the Goldbach conjecture. Looking at the question left by Terence Tao, Lin Xiao scrolled down again and glanced at the comments section. Besides a bunch of ordinary students worshipping the master or asking other questions, there were also discussions from renowned mathematicians. However, they generally encountered the same problem here. Can you prove that the previous expression is less than the next one? Lin Xiao fell into deep thought. A problem that stumped so many mathematical giants must be no easy task. He picked up a piece of paper and pen, wrote down a few equations, and then pondered them. Time passed slowly, and he discarded each scrap of paper into a nearby wastebasket. He'd bought himself a large one, so he could just crumple up the scraps and throw them in there. What do I do here? Just make equation I greater than equation II, and it's done. The only problem is the condition pj. Lin Xiao frowned at his result. After pausing for over 10 minutes, he simply put down his pen and picked up Mimi, petting her as he pondered. Perhaps it was the dopamine rush from petting the cat that fueled his brain's pleasure, multiplying his associations, and suddenly a light bulb went off in his head. That's right, I got it. I can try to construct a new number sequence. He immediately tossed Mimi back onto the table and began writing on his scrap paper, expressing his inspiration in words. Mimi, however, looked at her bewildered owner, who had just picked her up and petted her for a minute before putting her back down. It meowed, expressing its question, but its new owner clearly didn't have time to answer. 10 more minutes passed, and Lin Xiao, looking at his result, breathed a sigh of relief. It's quite challenging, indeed, a problem that would stump Terence Tao, but he had finally figured it out. Well, now that I've proven this formula, I can move on to refining the sieve method. Now he could continue following the line of thought that Terence Tao had drawn from this formula, studying this mathematical tool. But, after all, this was Terence Tao's work from a month ago. Maybe he'd already solved it. Lin Xiao pondered and decided to post his method under Terence Tao's comment. Regardless of whether or not he had solved the problem, he had used his ideas, so it was only right to share his knowledge. So he posted his derivation under Tao's reply and continued his research. He hadn't expected to get an immediate response from Tao. After all, it was a month ago, and he wasn't sure if he was still paying attention. On the other side of the Pacific Ocean, UCLA, the University of California, Los Angeles. As a world-renowned school, UCLA also has an outstanding position in mathematics, ranking 7th in the world. What supports its mathematical status is naturally related to its faculty. 3 Fields Medal winners are teaching here, and Terence Tao works here. At this moment, in Terence Tao's office, he was surfing the internet. Although he is a famous mathematician, he is still very interested in surfing the internet, just like their president. For example, in 2016, Terence Tao and the president who had just taken office and also likes surfing the internet had a quarrel on Twitter. Of course, the places where he surfs are generally places for mathematical academic discussions. At this moment, he is discussing problems with others on Mathoverflow. Huh? Someone replied to me. It's the post about the Goldbach conjecture, that happened a month ago, and for Terence Tao, it's not a memory. He studies whatever interests him. That's why Charles Pfefferman of Princeton University would say, if you have a difficult problem, go to Terence Tao. As long as it piques his interest, just like his proof of another form of the weak Goldbach conjecture, it was because he became interested in it that he diligently researched it and accidentally completed the proof. Of course, he had also seriously considered the new sieving method discussed in this post. However, due to the large number of replies, he initially didn't pay much attention. But after a quick glance, his eyebrows raised. Did it actually solve the problem I was having? He was intrigued. He went into the post and read the reply. Soon, surprise filled his eyes. So this is possible. Why didn't I see this before? Chapter 131 The Solution to Gaokao. Even Terence Tao, accustomed to being a genius, still felt admiration for those who could solve problems he couldn't. Just a year into his doctoral studies at Princeton University, Professor Andrew Wiles claimed to have proved Fermat's last theorem, a shocking moment for him. His classmates, constantly extolling the virtues of mathematics, also impressed him then, though later, it became their admiration. Now, this person he met online had unexpectedly solved his problem, and he felt a similar sense of admiration. Of course, it wasn't ruled out that this was someone he knew in real life. So, he looked at the person's name. Xiao Lin. As an Australian-born Chinese who even spoke Cantonese, he immediately recognized a Chinese name. So, his name must be Lin Xiao. The name easily reminded him of another mathematical prodigy of the year. Could it be Lin Xiao, the man who solved the Mersenne prime distribution and proposed the Lin conjecture? The Lin conjecture had caused quite a strip on its proposal, and Terence Tao, naturally, was intrigued and researched it. However, he ultimately gave up, believing the conjecture, which had shaken the algebraic geometry community, was too difficult. But precisely because of this, he had also harbored a desire to meet Lin Xiao, but the opportunity had never come. However, it seemed that geniuses attracted each other. Did this create a connection between them? He smiled slightly and replied to Lin Xiao's post. With such a brilliant answer and this ID, I believe you are the one who solved the Mersenne prime distribution law. Your derivation is perfect. If you're interested, add me on Instagram and we can discuss it in depth. Of course, if you don't have Instagram, I can also download your international version of QQ. You can private message me your contact information. Soon after replying, he began to anticipate Lin Xiao's response. After all, Lin Xiao's reply had been only 20 minutes ago, not long ago. Perhaps he'd receive a message soon. However, this wait lasted an indefinite amount of time. Lin Xiao, immersed in his next thought, had fallen into a state of deep concentration. When Zhang Ren and his granddaughter had visited him, it was already around 7 in the afternoon, so it quickly became dark. By the time he replied to Terence Tao's message, it was past 9 in the evening. He fell asleep around midnight. The US time was 12 hours behind China, so it was only noon at Terence Tao's place. He had his own things to do, so he gave up waiting in front of his computer. And so time passed again. 2 weeks later, Lin Xiao looked at the new screening method he had perfected. When it comes to prime number problems, two methods are often used, the circle method and the sieve method. The Hardy-Littlewood circle method has been the most commonly used method in analytic number theory for the past century. It is primarily used to solve asymptotic problems in number sequences, and it has also developed extremely wide applications in prime number problems. The sieve method, on the other hand, is a classic example, first created by ancient Greek mathematicians over 200 years before Christ. It has been used to this day, with many other methods based on the same principle being developed, primarily for the study of prime numbers. So, it seems there's hope for solving the parity problem that always plagues sieve methods. Lin Xiao looked at his final result. But instead of being immediately excited, he fell into a moment of contemplation. It took him over 2 weeks to finally develop this theory, which was quite a long time, partly due to his concurrent French studies. Of course, the long delay was due to a new approach to his thinking. He had previously spent 5 days researching along Tao's lines of thought, only to find himself faced with a problem he couldn't solve. He ultimately gave up, realizing it was unsolvable. However, those days of research sparked an inspiration, how to completely overcome a major shortcoming of the sieve method. This is the parity problem. Most sieve methods struggle to distinguish whether a number has an odd or even number of prime factors, a persistent problem to this day. While some progress has been made, such as the parity-sensitive sieve, it still has limitations. Solving this problem would undoubtedly be a significant achievement for number theory, potentially even providing crucial assistance in resolving the Goldbach conjecture and another twin prime conjecture. However, Lin Xiao had been pondering this issue for quite some time and still hadn't found a definitive solution. The theory he had developed was a new method that made it easier to factor a number and more accurately estimated the number of odd and even primes. This gave him some hope of completely solving the parity problem. Should I check out other people's research? Lin Xiao pondered this, suddenly recalling his reply to Terence Tao on that math forum. It's been 2 weeks, and I wonder if he's replied yet. He quickly logged into Math Overflow and, sure enough, found a reply. Did he reply on the same day as me? Seeing the two posts had the same date, Lin Xiao was stunned. He'd assumed Tao wouldn't respond for a few days. Then, seeing Tao's message, Lin Xiao added him on Instagram. He'd already registered for these international social media platforms. After all, after his time at the International Congress of Mathematicians, many mathematicians were interested in connecting with him in the future, so he simply signed up. He couldn't expect dozens of mathematicians to download QQ or WeChat. Soon after adding the other person's Instagram, Lin Xiao received a notification that his friend addition had been approved. Then, Tao sent a message. Mr. Lin, it's so hard to get in touch with you. Lin Xiao replied, Professor Tao, I'm sorry, I haven't been on Math Overflow for the past 2 weeks, and I forgot about it. It's okay, we're still friends now. Lin Xiao smiled and replied, Actually, I've been working on the idea you shared for a while now. After solving that problem, I wrote a lot more, but ultimately found it wasn't working. Tao, yes, after seeing you solve the problem I encountered earlier, I followed that idea and also encountered a problem. We ultimately couldn't determine the range of k, and I didn't continue my research after that. Lin Xiao, yes, but I used that idea to come up with another method. Then, Lin Xiao sent his new idea over. He wasn't worried that Tao would plagiarize his work. Such a renowned mathematician wouldn't even think of doing such a thing, even if it was just for their own reputation. Let me see. After Tao replied, there was no more news. 10 minutes later, a message that sounded genuinely surprised arrived. Incredible. It's actually possible. You truly deserve to be the most renowned mathematical genius of our time. Why hadn't I thought of this? Seeing his work receive such a startling reaction from a Fields medalist, Lin Xiao felt rather pleased. He'd usually been impressed by the online comments praising his achievements, but now, he'd gotten used to them and didn't care. It was only Professor Yang's praise of him earlier, and now, the astonished reaction from this Mozart of mathematics, that gave him a sense of validation. Perhaps it was the satisfaction of receiving recognition from one's peers. He then replied with a smile, It's truly an honor to have even Professor Tao so impressed. Also, I think the method I used could be further extended to completely solve the parity problem. Terence Tao, no, you don't have to call me Professor Tao, just call me Tao. I was really impressed by the 2 prime number problems you solved earlier. However, I probably can't help you with this one. As you can see, I couldn't even solve the previous one, which means I've exhausted all my interest in it. Now that I've met you, I've suddenly become interested in Lin's conjecture again, even though I've been working on it for weeks before, but ultimately failed. Lin Xiao, well, maybe it has something to do with my cat? If you don't have a cat, I recommend getting one. Petting a cat when you encounter a problem might help you figure it out. Terence Tao, really? I'll try it later, but I'm not sure if my wife would like it. Having completed his recommendation, Lin Xiao felt a sense of satisfaction in sharing. He turned to look at Mimi next to him and reached out to stroke her again. However, at this moment, Tao replied, Of course. I once had a bold idea. Why not combine the circle method and the sieve method? If successful, I'm sure there will be amazing discoveries. Lin Xiao was stunned. Can these two be combined? As for mathematics, the Langlands program can unify number theory and algebraic geometry. Who knows if these methods can be unified? I'll recommend a few papers. DOI 10.2307/196. After a while, Lin Xiao saw a bunch of identifiers sent by the other party, all of which were papers, and the time span of these papers ranged from 70 or 80 years ago to the past few years. Thanks a lot. I'll take a look now. Yes, no problem. Oh, by the way, if it's possible, could you please post your new sieve method on our sieve? I'd like to see your steps in more detail. Of course, no problem. Lin Xiao had already finished organizing it, and the version he had just sent to Tao was a simplified version. So he spent some time to finish it, and after about a day or two, when the system test was completed, he could query it. Then, he started to read the paper sent by Terence Tao. After reading the first paper, he was attracted to it. This paper from Rademacher, a German mathematician in the last century, surprisingly extended the combination of the circle method in the process of studying the sieve method. Although there was no result, and it was even just talked about somewhere in the paper, it was inspiring to Lin Xiao. Gradually, Lin Xiao sank into it. It is also a scholarly article, recommended to read. Chapter 132 Heading to Paris. Time passed quickly. Academician Tang Qing's project was nearing completion, and the ultimate goal was already very close. Lin Xiao's role in this project was self-evident. Academician Tang Qing had already considered offering Lin Xiao a second author position, and Professor Xiao Chengqing had agreed. Throughout the research process, he felt his contributions were inferior to Lin Xiao's, and naturally felt hesitant to ask for the second author position. Although Lin Xiao initially declined, he ultimately accepted the position due to the insistence of the two professors. However, compared to his research on this project, his research on the Goldbach conjecture remained stuck. He had to admit that the difficulty of the conjecture was somewhat beyond his imagination. This was indeed true. In 1921, the British mathematician Thomas Hardy declared, "The difficulty of the Goldbach conjecture is comparable to any known mathematical problem." Hardy was one of the originators of the circle method, and even he considered the Goldbach conjecture so difficult, which clearly demonstrates the enormity of the problem. Comparing the Goldbach conjecture to the Riemann hypothesis, the Goldbach conjecture is admittedly less important than the Riemann hypothesis, but it's still considered the crown jewel of mathematics. And if we compare the Goldbach conjecture to the twin primes conjecture, Terence Tao, a versed mathematician, once remarked that the former is more difficult than the latter. Therefore, having plunged headfirst into this pit, Lin Xiao could only use his less than 4% developed brain to try to satisfy the requirements of this peerless beauty known as the Goldbach conjecture. Only by satisfying these requirements could he reap the joy of success. For a mathematician, the allure of solving these mathematical conjectures was no less than that of a peerless beauty. He also knew he had 15 hours of sage state remaining, but there was no guarantee that using it now would lead to a final breakthrough. Therefore, he preferred to save those 15 hours for when inspiration struck. Unfortunately, 2 months had passed, and he still hadn't succeeded. Of course, giving up wasn't the last step. His initial research on Mersenne primes had taken him nearly a month. The Goldbach conjecture was more difficult, so taking longer wasn't a big deal. Furthermore, he only spent about half his time studying the Goldbach conjecture each day. The rest of his time was spent studying French and attending to other matters. As for French, he was almost done. With his brain's current development, his memory and comprehension abilities were vastly improved, making learning a single language much easier. He had mastered everyday French and memorized all the mathematical terms, allowing him to communicate with Professor Suji in French without any problems. So, he was ready to travel to Paris, France, to attend the Bourbaki seminar. Upon learning of his participation, they had already sent him an invitation, and with that invitation, he easily obtained a visa at the French embassy. Since he couldn't solve the Goldbach conjecture for the time being, he could go to that gathering place for mathematicians and discuss things with him. December arrived, and the January exams were just around the corner. Lin Xiao wasn't exempt from the course, but he still had to take the exams. This put him in an awkward position. He was traveling to France in January, so he obviously couldn't attend. The college naturally made special arrangements, scheduling a separate exam for him. And then, on December 24th, after a rather embarrassingly awkward ideological and political theory exam, he finally finished all his tests. Oh damn. I almost forgot I had to take this. Lin Xiao couldn't help but wipe his sweat as he left the exam room. Only after the school scheduled the exam did he realize he still had to take ideological and political theory. So, he crammed frantically before the exam with his formidable memory. He'd memorized nearly the entire book in 3 days, and finally passed today. Still, the result was good. He should have a good chance of getting over 90 in ideological and political theory. As for the other math subjects, if he didn't get a perfect score, he'd be embarrassed when people called him God Lin. After leaving the exam room, the one he'd prepared for was held in the mathematics department office building, so he went straight to Suji. Finished? How did it go? Yes, I did. My GPA is guaranteed to be above 3.9. Lin Xiao didn't hesitate, taking a seat next to him and giving him an OK sign. Having been here so often, he was already familiar with the place. Suji raised an eyebrow and said with a smile, "Only 3.9? It has to be 4.0, Lin Xiao said helplessly. This ideological and political theory course is so difficult. I almost forgot it existed. Suji chuckled. That's true. Everyone in the School of Mathematics at Peking University was a superstar, but most people had a hard time with these courses. After all, it was just memorization, and science majors naturally hated it. Well, let's fly to Paris on the 31st. Xiaozhou and Xiaoxi will also go, Suji said with a smile. Lin Xiao nodded. Xiaozhou and Xiaoxi were Suji's graduate students, one with a master's degree and the other with a doctorate. They presumably spoke French. After all, to go there, besides having money, one had to speak the language. The two graduate students nodded back. Xiaozhou even ran over to pour Lin Xiao a cup of tea, handing it to him. Master Lin, please take us with you when the time comes. Lin Xiao was at a loss for words. Not really, not really. Just ask me if you have any questions. Drink it. Xiaozhou handed the tea to Lin Xiao. After drinking his tea, Lin Xiao left without further delay, returning to Yanbi Garden. Since he was going to Paris, he naturally couldn't bring Mimi with him. After some thought, he asked Professor Zhang, who lived upstairs. Professor Zhang had been coming to talk with his granddaughter frequently over the past 2 months. As a result, the old man, who originally disliked cats, now adopting Mimi for a while? Of course, no problem. Zhang Ren looked quite surprised. Lin Xiao was surprised for a moment when he heard Zhang Ren agreed so easily. I was worried that you wouldn't agree. Do you like cats now? That's not the case. It's just that I can't leave the cat alone at home. Besides, Nanan likes it too. Keeping it for a few days will make her happy. Zhang Ren didn't admit the fact that he liked cats. Lin Xiao couldn't help laughing at this, but of course he didn't expose it. In any case, the thing he was most worried about before was solved. After that, he just waited patiently for December 31st, the day to go to Paris. He really wanted to know if he could find the final key to prove his brother's guess there. And he hoped he could. Please give me a monthly ticket. Chapter 133 Sprite and Red Wine Cocktail. January 1st, French time. Lin Xiao arrived in Paris. This city, known as the world's romantic capital, was truly as beautiful as its legends had described it. The Eiffel Tower, perched on the banks of the Seine, was particularly striking, its architectural grandeur undeniable. Of course, this was only for international visitors. For Parisians, the general feeling was, what's so great about that lousy Eiffel Tower? However, for Lin Xiao, these beauties didn't quite register, just as he listened to Zhou, but had little interest in the cafes on the left bank along the Seine. He was drawn to the Eiffel Tower's rigorous structural mechanics, the infinite mysteries hidden in the fluid motion of the Seine, and the vibrant atmosphere of mathematics. Upon arriving in Paris, he checked into a hotel near 11 Rue Pierre Marie Curie, home to the Institut Henri Poincaré, a mathematical institute where the Bourbaki seminars were held. The Bourbaki seminar began on January 5th, so there were still a few days to go. When Lin Xiao had some free time, he would go to the Poincaré Institute to attend the mathematicians' afternoon tea and chat with them. Occasionally, someone would recognize him and approach him with a smile to discuss Lin's conjecture and other topics. On January 4th, a welcome dinner for this year's Bourbaki seminar took place at the Poincaré Institute. Of course, many mathematicians attended this gathering, or rather, it was always crowded. After all, Paris has the largest number of mathematicians in the world, and for them, attending the Bourbaki seminar was less than an hour's drive, unless they lived outside the city. Paris is divided into small and large Paris. Small Paris refers to the main city area, which is just over 100 square kilometers in area. If converted into a square, it would only be 10 kilometers on a side, less than 1/100th of the 16,000 square kilometers of Shanghai. Even the area within the 6th ring road of Shanghai is over 2,000 square kilometers. At the gathering, Lin Xiao spotted some mathematicians he'd met at the International Congress of Mathematicians, though they were all enjoying the moment. It was a European tradition to enjoy a party, and this welcome dinner was perfectly in keeping with that tradition, with wine and dancing. Combined with Europe's openness and the traditional French romance, perhaps a romance would unfold between a couple tonight. As a mathematical prodigy, often called a modern-day Gauss, Lin Xiao, with his youthful, oriental good looks, attracted considerable attention from the women. "Can I sit here?" A French woman in a red dress sat down next to him. Although she asked, it was clear she wasn't seeking Lin Xiao's opinion. Her crossed legs pulled the slit of her skirt aside, revealing the whiteness of her round thighs. Lin Xiao glanced at her, knowing full well what she meant. He said bluntly, "Sorry, I don't like women older than me." The woman's face froze, but she continued, "How would you know if you don't try? I'm only 23, and I'm getting my master's degree at the École Normale Supérieure." She pursed her red lips, then flicked her tongue over her lower lip, gently licking her long, wavy blonde hair, radiating the allure of a Western woman. The École Normale Supérieure? Lin Xiao was stunned. This was also a renowned mathematics institution, boasting 14 Fields Medal winners. Its mathematical prowess was undeniable. No wonder this woman was there. He then said, "I'm only 18, and you're 5 years older." "Forget it," the French woman. Then, with a sly word, she left. But just then, Lin Xiao saw another woman approach him. "I'm 17 years old, sister." 17 isn't even an adult. "You're trying to harm me, but in France, you can get married at 15. Do you know what personal jurisdiction means in law? I'm Chinese, so I'm also subject to Chinese law here, and Chinese law stipulates that you can only get married at 22. The third woman, "I'm 18, I like younger people." Murd, %. Having successfully dismissed the 3 enthusiastic women, Lin Xiao raised his goblet and offered a humble toast to the stunned men around him. He then took a sip of the red cocktail inside, actually, 1/2 red wine and 1/2 Sprite. A man who hides his achievements and fame. Ha ha ha, future Professor Lin, your performance just now, if I write about you in my autobiography, I'll have to include your performance today. At that moment, Lin Xiao heard a hearty laugh from the side. Hearing future Professor Lin, Lin Xiao realized who it was. He turned and saw a mathematician he was familiar with approaching, Andrew Wiles. Andrew Wiles was originally a professor at the Institute for Advanced Study in Princeton, but 8 years ago he returned to his alma mater, Oxford University, to teach. Britain and France are not far apart, so he would usually come to attend the Bourbaki seminar whenever he had time. Lin Xiao didn't know whether to laugh or cry. "Professor Wiles, please don't be like this. I still have to save face." "Oh? Then you have to explain to me why you refused the invitation of the 3 ladies." "It's not good to refuse ladies," Lin Xiao shrugged. "The Chinese are reserved. If you are too enthusiastic, I will feel a little overwhelmed. Acceptance is not a lifetime. Trying it once can also leave you with experience for the future," Wiles said with a smile. At the same time, he clinked glasses with Lin Xiao and pointed at his glass. "The color of your wine is wrong." "Cocktail." Lin Xiao shook the glass with a smile. "Trying something like this once, that's too casual." "Cocktail? Don't they only serve red wine here?" Wiles was puzzled as to where the cocktail came from, but then shook his head with emotion. "I really don't understand what you are thinking." Lin Xiao smiled and said, "If your wife knew you were talking to me about this, I'm afraid she would be dissatisfied." "Of course not. I'm guiding a young person to establish the right outlook on love and marriage, just like my wife Nada and I." Wiles smiled slightly. "You know, I failed in my first attempt to prove Fermat's last theorem. Without the support of Nada and my 2 daughters, I would have had a hard time getting through that time. Proving Fermat's last theorem was my childhood dream, and the blow of failure just when I thought I was on the verge of victory was too much to bear. But in the end, I obviously succeeded. I want to say that there is something magical about realizing one's childhood dreams. Only a few people have this privilege, and I am lucky to be one of them, and the support from my family was the source of energy that ultimately enabled me to succeed." One night during that difficult period, I held my daughter Claire in my arms and told her a bedtime story, trying to coax her to sleep, but she told me a story in return. It said that Prometheus also suffered hardships and torture after stealing fire, but he eventually escaped and accomplished his goal. After that, I stopped fearing and even avoided it. Then, in May 1994, my 3rd daughter was born. She gave me even more motivation, and by September, I finally succeeded. Listening to Wiles's story, Lin Xiao nodded with a sense of understanding. "You have a happy family, of course." Wiles' eyes were filled with happiness, perhaps the memories bringing back memories of the past. He then downed his glass of red wine in one gulp, looked at the waiter next to him, and beckoned, "Do you still have cocktails here? Give me one like his." The waiter looked bewildered. "We only have red wine, no cocktails." Wiles was stunned and looked at Lin Xiao. "Your cocktail, okay, I admit it." Lin Xiao, helpless, pulled out a bottle of Sprite from his pocket. He had just bought it. He couldn't stand the dry taste of wine. Sometimes, he even wondered why people liked to drink. Upon seeing it, Wiles' eyes lit up. "Did you buy this outside?" "Yes, give me a minute, I'll get one too." With that, Wiles put down his glass and ran out. A moment later, he returned with another bottle of Sprite. He ordered another glass of red wine, poured some Sprite into it, and took a sip. He immediately praised, "This cocktail is absolutely brilliant." Lin Xiao smiled. Of course, after a few sips, Wiles said, "By the way, that sieve method you shared on our Ziv a few months ago was based on the Goldbach conjecture." "Yes." "Oh? How is it going now?" "It hasn't been worked out yet, so I came here looking for inspiration." "Really? Then I wish you success." Wiles smiled. "Good luck." The welcome party ended, and the next day, the seminar officially began. The seminar had 4 lectures a day, and the topics were generally broad. For example, on the first day, they covered several theories, including the stability reduction theorem and cohomology over finite fields. Lin Xiao simply listened to these theories. The next day, a lecture piqued his interest. The lecture was about Lin's group transformation method and Lin's conjecture, and the speaker was Laurent Laforgue, the 2002 Fields Medal winner. It was impossible for Lin Xiao to miss a Fields Medal winner sharing his theory. Thanks to Su Qinggayu for the 1,500 starting coins, and thanks to Choices and Decisions, why should we always remember the passers-by of life for the 100 starting coins? Chapter 134 He is answering your questions. January 6, in the rotunda of the Poincaré Institute, a lecture focusing on Lin's group transformation method and Lin's conjecture was underway. I cannot help but marvel at Lin's ingenious construction at this step. He successfully transformed this function into modular form. This is a truly brilliant method. I could write 4 or 5 papers on this method. In fact, I searched on Arxiv and found 20 or 30 papers, and it was also during this step that Lin deduced his conjecture at last year's International Congress of Mathematicians. I'm sure everyone is familiar with this, so I'll derive it again here. Laurent Laforgue began writing. Easily, we've arrived at the final formula. Now, as long as we can prove that k equals 1, we can guarantee that any function can be transformed into a layer form. I don't need to elaborate on its importance, everyone should be aware of it. Actually, the proponent of the Lin conjecture is here today. If I have time later, I'd love to hear his thoughts. As Laurent Laforgue spoke, everyone in the room turned their gazes to the side, where Lin Xiao sat. Suddenly called out, Lin Xiao smiled and nodded. However, he sensed a few more hateful glances. He took a closer look. They seemed to be those women he had rejected last night. He quickly averted his gaze. Men don't fight women. Laurent Laforgue on the stage didn't pause, continuing his speech. I think the most important aspect of Lin's thinking is his focus on bridges. Bridges in mathematics connect two seemingly unrelated things, and this is indeed the case. Our mathematical research has always required building bridges. Whether it's modern algebraic geometry, founded by Grothendieck, or the Langlands program proposed by Professor Langlands, they were all accomplished through the continuous building of bridges, and building bridges requires more than just strong technical skills like Lin's. It also tests your ability to observe subtle details. The more attentive you are, the more you'll discover details that are difficult for ordinary people to see. Besides the renowned mathematicians, the majority of the people present were students. Upon hearing Professor Laforgue's words, the students pondered thoughtfully, and the mathematicians nodded slightly in agreement. Lin Xiao's talent and skills were innate, something most people don't possess. Therefore, most people can only focus on the subtle details. But are subtle details so easy to detect? Building bridges and details, Lin Xiao also fell into thought, reviewing all the knowledge he had acquired. Of course, he knew he needed to build a bridge. To connect the circle method and the sieve method, a bridge must be constructed between them. They were like the Suez Canal between Asia and Africa. Although its maximum width of just over 300 meters seemed insignificant compared to the vastness of the two continents, even a 400-meter-long cargo ship could block it. It was precisely this small distance that kept the two continents only visible from each other. Once the bridge was built, Asia, Europe, and Africa would be truly connected, becoming the most colossal continent on Earth. The same was true for the circle method and the sieve method. However, building a bridge requires attention to detail and finding the most suitable location for construction, otherwise the bridge would fail. What details haven't I noticed, or rather, what angles hasn't he tried? Suddenly, Lin Xiao's eyes lit up. Complex plane, that's right. The complex plane. The complex plane generally refers to the plane of complex numbers. What are complex numbers? That is, something with the imaginary unit I, as defined by mathematicians, or the square root of -1, generally expressed as z equals a plus b. This purely artificial concept later played a role in mathematical research that mathematicians could hardly have imagined, including the Riemann zeta function in the Riemann hypothesis, which determines the number of prime numbers in the complex plane. This is another wonderful coincidence in mathematics. Lin Xiao suddenly realized that he might also have found a coincidence that could realize the bridge he wanted to build in the complex plane. He immediately lowered his head, pulled a notepad and pen from his pocket, and began to calculate. No one around him paid any attention to his actions, because many people in the lecture were holding notepads and pens, perhaps jotting down something interesting the speaker mentioned. However, what Lin Xiao wrote down at this moment was different from what Professor Laforgue had said. Construct a unit circle on the complex plane. Assuming that prime numbers are points on these complex planes, here, we can use the prime counting function. Gradually, Lin Xiao entered his own state, oblivious to the people and things around him. Time, apparently, did not wait for Lin Xiao, but gradually slipped away with every action everyone made. Each Bourbaki seminar lecture lasted an hour and a half, and by the time Lin Xiao grasped a small point he had previously overlooked, more than half an hour had already passed. Thus, the lecture entered its final 20 minutes. Professor Laurent Laforgue had finished his presentation, and it was time for questions. Hands rose one after another, and many asked questions, and Laurent Laforgue responded in turn. This went on until, with only 5 minutes remaining, Laurent Laforgue smiled and said, "Does anyone have any questions?" After a pause, someone, presumably a student, raised their hand. "Go ahead," the student said with a smile. "I'd like to know what kind of research journey led Professor Lin to complete the theory of Lin's group transformation method." Clearly, this question was no longer academic, and the student probably asked it because no one else was asking. Professor Laurent Laforgue smiled and said, "Of course I can't answer that. That should probably be left to our Professor Lin. It just so happens that I just mentioned that I'd like to discuss this with Professor Lin." He then looked toward Lin Xiao again and said with a smile, "I wonder if Mr. Lin would be interested in sharing his experience." Everyone in the room smiled and turned to look at Lin Xiao. But after a moment, to everyone's confusion, Lin Xiao didn't stand up to answer. Those who were closer to him could see what he was doing. He was writing various formulas in his notebook, seemingly oblivious to his surroundings. "What's he writing about?" someone whispered. "Who knows? Perhaps it's another new theory that can rival Lin's group transformation method." Others shook their heads, indicating they didn't know. "It looks so complicated, but how can he be so focused? Is he completely oblivious to his surroundings? I don't know. I only get this kind of energy when I'm playing Call of Duty." Incredible, Professor Laurent Laforgue, observing this, helplessly threw his hands to the questioner and said, "It seems our Mr. Lin is still struggling on his path in mathematics and can't answer your question for now." He looked at Lin Xiao, his head bowed in deep thought, and added, "Or perhaps, Lin is answering your question? He's demonstrating firsthand how he approaches mathematics." Everyone immediately understood Laurent Laforgue's words. The questioner had intended to ask Lin Xiao about his research, which led to his successful Lin group transformation method. And didn't Lin Xiao's selfless research simply answer his question? Everyone couldn't help but feel immense admiration and emotion for Lin Xiao. Being able to remain immersed in this kind of thought, even amidst the distractions of other voices, perhaps only this ability, combined with unparalleled talent, could allow him to achieve his current achievements? Even the French female students who had been rejected by Lin Xiao last night couldn't help but admire him. They watched Lin Xiao pondering under everyone's gaze, his brows furrowed and relaxed from time to time, a sentiment that reminded them of the saying, "Men with a background in science and engineering are most attractive when they're contemplating." Chapter 135. We are witnessing history. Although everyone's attention was focused on Lin Xiao, Su Ji, Xiao Zhou, and Xiao Shi, who sat beside him, also felt the intensity of being the center of attention. Su Ji was fine, he was used to being stared at, especially since none of them were looking at him. He was simply amazed at Lin Xiao's ability to concentrate so intently on his research without being distracted. He glanced at what Lin Xiao was working on, but couldn't make out anything. The notebook was too small, the pages too short, and since he hadn't looked at the front, He had no idea what Lin Xiao was writing. Xiaozhou and Xiaoxi, facing the various glances, couldn't help but feel a sense of nervousness. Even though everyone was staring at Lin Xiao, being nearby sometimes felt like a stressful situation. Especially with so many prominent figures gathered here, including 6 or 7 Fields medalists alone. To alleviate the pressure, they pretended to be watching Lin Xiao's work. But this presented another problem: they couldn't understand anything Lin Xiao was writing, which only made them even more desperate. Seeing that Lin Xiao didn't seem to be feeling the same pressure as they did, instead appearing unfazed, they could only internally exclaim, "Awesome!" Thus, the once peaceful Bourbaki seminar suddenly took on a strange appearance. Hundreds of people in the audience focused their attention on the young man sitting on the left side of the 6th row. Some murmured, others stared in awe, but the young man remained lost in thought, as if lost in his own world, oblivious to his surroundings. A photographer at the scene found this scene fascinating, so he stood at the right rear of the hall and snapped a picture. The picture, he thought, resembled the Last Supper, though with a different meaning, a tribute to the mathematical genius. A perfect picture, the photographer nodded with satisfaction, preparing to keep it for later. Meanwhile, Professor Laurent Laforgue, observing the scene from the stage, didn't seem disrespectful. Instead, a smile crossed his face. Lin Xiao had been attending the lecture, but he'd been lost in thought for some time. This suggests that something in Lin Xiao's lecture had inspired him. As the speaker, he'd be proud to have a mathematical achievement stem from his own lecture. He then said, "Since everyone is interested in Lin's research, this lecture concludes. Let's all wish Lin a breakthrough." The others, hearing Laurent Laforgue's words, realized the Fields Medal winner's lecture wasn't over yet. They were about to applaud and thank Laurent Laforgue for his lecture, but he stopped them, holding his index finger to his lips. "Shh, don't disturb Lin. We might just be witnessing history." Everyone smiled, and many leaned forward, curious to learn what Lin Xiao was researching. It was time to leave, but no one did. The mathematicians were eager to know what Lin Xiao was studying so diligently, and so were the students. The commotion Lin Xiao had created was enough to keep them there. Some of the students had come from abroad with their mentors, while many more were mathematics students at nearby universities, such as the École Normale Supérieure in Paris or the University of Paris-Ville. While a few, due to their talent, were able to enter university before the age of 18, the majority were over 18, and most were graduate students. Therefore, facing Lin Xiao, a young Chinese man who was the same age as them, or even a few years younger, yet had achieved remarkable success in the mathematical world, they all felt a desire to get closer to him and understand his thinking, just as the students had just stood up and asked. And at this moment, Lin Xiao's unusual move only served to further their admiration. Everyone was talking, but of course, they controlled their voices to avoid disturbing Lin Xiao. Those seats near Lin Xiao became VIPs, such as those occupied by Xiaozhou and Xiaoxi. They probably felt they were too much of an eyesore, so they voluntarily left to make room for others. The others, however, watched Lin Xiao's movements, trying to discern what he was researching. "What do you think he's working on?" Professor Laforgue stepped down from the stage and approached Professor Wiles. Several other seats were occupied by Fields medalists, as well as winners of the Abel Prize, the Wolf Prize, the Crawford Prize, and other prestigious figures in mathematics. Professor Wiles smiled and said, "I'm guessing it's the Goldbach conjecture." "I guess it's the Goldbach conjecture too," several other mathematicians chimed in. Seeing their unanimous agreement, Laforgue asked, "How do you know?" "That guy Wiles just said it," a Crawford Prize winner said. Wiles spread his hands. "Lin told me at the party last night, Goldbach's conjecture." Laurent Laforgue's face flickered with surprise. "Is he planning to tackle something this difficult now? That's why we all call him a genius." Wiles smiled. Laurent Laforgue couldn't help but glance at Lin Xiao again. He had previously assumed it was some other research project, and he wouldn't have been surprised if Lin Xiao had even entertained some idea about Lin's conjecture. But now, he was saying Lin Xiao was researching Goldbach's conjecture? That is a bit unbelievable, isn't it? "It's unbelievable, but it's the truth," Wiles smiled. "Let's hope he succeeds. That way, a problem that once failed us all will finally be solved." The other professors nodded. The Goldbach conjecture has stumped the mathematical community for centuries. Solving it has been the dream of countless mathematicians. If it were truly solved, it would be a truly regrettable resolution for each of them. If he succeeds, I'll have to invite him to the École Normale Supérieure in Paris to teach in mathematics, a nearby professor said. Let him go to Oxford University, Wiles said. For a genius like him, I think he'd be better off coming to MIT with me, another mathematics professor who had flown in from the United States remarked. Suddenly, several professors began arguing. If the prover of the Goldbach conjecture could come to their schools as a professor, it would obviously attract many young students. However, at this moment, Lin Xiao, the one being watched by everyone, suddenly stopped writing. Monthly votes, please. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelis. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 136. Can he succeed? Lin Xiao paused, his mind surging like a spring, now finally hitting a snag. Using only a notepad to carry out the next step was clearly inconvenient. He snapped out of his immersion and looked up. The next moment, he was stunned. What was going on? Why were so many people looking at him? What happened? He whispered to Suji beside him. Everyone's looking forward to your research, Suji replied with a smile. Looking forward to mine? Lin Xiao was stunned. What was there to look forward to in his research? Aren't you working on the Goldbach conjecture? Shouldn't you have found a breakthrough by now? What are the results? Lin Xiao shook his head. I've got a difficult problem right now. I need a quieter place and more time to research. Let's go back to the hotel. Is the lecture over already? It's been over for over 10 minutes, Suji said with a smile. Lin Xiao was stunned. Over 10 minutes already? At that moment, Andrew Wiles approached, smiling, and asked, looks like you've found your inspiration. Hearing Wiles' question, Lin Xiao nodded. Yes, I've grasped it for now, but I haven't yet honed it into fruition, but at least it's better than nothing, Wiles said with a smile. Besides, you've made history, having so many of us stay and wait for you, so many people. Lin Xiao paused, then stood up. As he stood, he was truly astonished. Everyone in the room was focused on him, their gazes searching. He couldn't help but scratch his face. He was just researching a problem, so why was so much attention focused on him? Seeing this, Wiles smiled and announced loudly, all right, everyone, please don't gather here for now. Lin needs some time. Cheer him up so he can focus on his research. Hearing Wiles' words, everyone applauded and shouted, go. Lin, go. Lin. Hearing so many people, especially strangers, cheering him on, Lin Xiao felt a passion for mathematics for the first time. A smile spread across his face, and he nodded to everyone around him, saying loudly, thank you, everyone. I'll have good news, okay, young people and professors alike applauded. Everyone was sincerely hoping Lin Xiao would succeed. Although not everyone knew that Lin Xiao was aiming to solve the Goldbach conjecture, it didn't stop their enthusiasm from rising. At this moment, they were pure, just as pure as mathematics itself. Amidst the cheers, the discussion finally concluded. People began to leave, and Lin Xiao quickly returned to the hotel. No one had invited him, because no one would bother him during what was likely the most crucial period of his life. He finally sat down at the hotel table and breathed a sigh of relief. Receiving so much encouragement from so many people made him feel the same kind of excitement that comes from academic research. It was different from the excitement of scoring a goal in the World Cup, as the latter comes from the body, while the former is mental. But the two also stemmed from the same source, as they both aimed to achieve a certain goal. However, this also put a certain amount of pressure on Lin Xiao. If he didn't complete his goal, perhaps those who had cheered him on wouldn't say anything, but he would feel like he had let so many people down. Of course, for him, pressure was also motivation. Besides, he always succeeded. He focused his gaze on his notebook, then found a larger piece of scratch paper nearby. Then, activate Sage State, the system's voice rang out. Sage State, activated. Current remaining time. 15 hours. Pause every 5 hours. Lin Xiao was stunned. Pause every 5 hours? He remembered that he couldn't pause last time, but the last time Sage State lasted only 5 hours. Of course, this was a good thing. If he had only spent 10 hours, he could have avoided wasting an extra 5 hours. Then, before Lin Xiao could even think about it, he suddenly felt his mind become exceptionally clear. All the truths of the world seemed within reach. He seemed to be able to see the stress concentration points on the table before him. Looking up at the hotel window, he even seemed to be able to see the length, width, and geometry of the billboard across the street. This state, Lin Xiao felt a little incredulous for a moment. This ability to accurately determine proportions with just a glance was truly beyond imagination. System, how much has my brain development increased now? Based on the host's current body's tolerance, this sage state increases brain development by 75%. Currently, it's 6.7375%. Lin Xiao's face was immediately filled with surprise. A 75% increase? If it was within the body's tolerance, then that meant the health capsules he had taken earlier had increased his body's tolerance. He couldn't help but feel delighted. Perhaps he needed to exercise more in the future? Then, without further thought, he returned his gaze to the draft paper in front of him. In this state, how could I possibly be stumped by you? The corners of his mouth curled up slightly, and then, confidently, he picked up his pen and began to write. The draft paper became his battlefield, and the symbols representing various mathematical meanings became his weapons. Now his goal was to conquer the Goldbach conjecture. Time passed quickly. Lin Xiao's quiet research contrasted with the discussions outside. For the hundreds of mathematics students attending Professor Laurent Laforgue's meeting, what happened today in the circular conference room of the Poincaré Institute was enough for them to share with their friends and classmates. Those who knew that Lin Xiao was going to solve the Goldbach conjecture also spread the news. In less than 5 hours, every mathematics student in Paris knew about it. Needless to say, Paris's mathematical atmosphere is incredibly vibrant. Gaokao, in his autobiography, mentioned that Parisians proudly proclaim, "Our best people study mathematics." Great mathematicians like Lagrange, Fermat, Fourier, and Cauchy all hailed from France. Therefore, the locals admire and respect those who can solve difficult mathematical problems, especially renowned ones like the Goldbach conjecture. Consequently, they all began to await news from Lin Xiao. While there was no guarantee of immediate success, perhaps he would solve the problem after returning to China after the Bourbaki seminar, or perhaps he would never be able to solve it at all. Everyone was eagerly anticipating it. Of course, the news wasn't limited to Parisian circles, it reached the European and American mathematical communities. While the Chinese mathematical community, isolated from foreign news outlets, was unable to receive the news immediately, the spread of the news on major websites like Twitter and YouTube eventually reached China. Suji, Xiao Shi, and Xiao Zhou, who were in Paris and witnessed the entire process firsthand, also confirmed the news to the Chinese. Suddenly, the international attention made Lin Xiao the center of everyone's attention. At the same time, a question loomed in everyone's mind. Can he succeed? Enrique Pompiri asked Pierre Delaine in the dining hall of the Institute for Advanced Study in Princeton. They were enjoying afternoon tea, a daily ritual for them. A cup of fragrant coffee followed by a discussion of academic matters or anecdotes with a Fields medalist or Nobel Prize winner was a favorite pastime for these scholars, beyond their academic research. He's got a lot of comprehension, maybe he'll succeed. Delaine shook his head, then sighed. The Goldbach conjecture. If he can actually solve it, he'll truly be at the forefront of the younger generation of mathematicians. Yes, Pompiri nodded. If he can solve it, he'll even have a Fields medal. The Fields medal? That's so small-minded. Delaine smiled and shook his head. He'll have the Abel Prize, the Wolf Prize, the Crawford Prize lined up for him. Various mathematical organizations will be vying to invite him to become members. Plus, every few decades, say 50 years, there might even be a conference commemorating the proof of Goldbach's theorem. Furthermore, every university in the world will be vying to invite him to become a professor, and he's only a freshman now, right? I'm afraid he can't even become a professor. Oh my god, that's even more incredible. At this point, Delaine didn't know where to go next. At this age, it was truly too shocking. Pompiri's face was filled with emotion. Yeah, he's only 18 now, right? Oh, 19, I think. He turned 18 last year. The next Fields Medal will be awarded in 2022, and he'll be only 22 then. He'll be the youngest ever winner, and even if the next one has to wait until the 2026 International Congress of Mathematicians to accommodate other mathematicians, he'll still be the youngest ever, Delaine emphasized. Yes, Pompiri nodded. The youngest Fields medalist. But perhaps only the Fields medal is worthy of the honor of proving the Goldbach conjecture. Lin picked up the coffee, took a sip, and then said with emotion, "Then I wish him success. Thanks to Xiao, 20220403124404398, and Kitty Xiangxia for their 1,500 starting coins. Thanks to Gao for their 500 starting coins. Thanks to ZJJ0410JJZ for their 300 starting coins. Thanks to Beta for their 200 starting coins. Thanks to Yun Shifang and Kunlani Wanshan for their 100 starting coins." Chapter 137 completed the proof. Mathematics Level 4. In China, at the CCTV headquarters building, the famous Big Pants building, the station director was in a meeting, issuing his orders to the CCTV correspondents in Paris. Try to interview Lin Xiao. If Lin Xiao isn't available, interview Professor Su Ji of Peking University first. If possible, interview a foreign mathematician as well. But no matter what, don't let Lin Xiao get interviewed by other media outlets first. We Chinese must be the first to interview the achievements of our Chinese people. Remember, yes, after hanging up the phone, the station director couldn't help but look at his face in amazement. The Goldbach conjecture was incredibly well known in China, and he knew about it. The Goldbach conjecture's popularity was closely related to Chen Jingren's original proof of 1 plus 2. In Chen Jingren's time, the new China was just beginning, and the fact that a Chinese mathematician could achieve such a world-class result clearly excited everyone. And so, people became aware of the Goldbach conjecture, and people like the station director also learned about it later. Chen Jingren previously proved the 1 plus 2 form of the Goldbach conjecture, and now Lin Xiao has the opportunity to prove it completely. This will naturally attract attention in China. Doesn't this mean that Chinese scientists are becoming increasingly prosperous? The director recalled Mr. Yang's evaluation of Lin Xiao some time ago. He was aware of this matter, but at that time he simply regarded it as the elders' praise for their outstanding juniors. Now, he couldn't help but send his best wishes to the young man who was still in Paris, and sighed in his heart, "What an amazing young man. This is an example they should work hard to set." And it wasn't just CCTV. Numerous media outlets were paying attention to this matter. After all, this was a proof of the Goldbach conjecture, especially since the protagonist had previously sparked international discussion due to Professor Lin's evaluation. Many well-known international platforms discussed the matter, and well-known media outlets also wanted to interview Lin Xiao. However, in the end, these media outlets found that they could not contact Lin Xiao, and all their calls to Lin Xiao went unanswered. This left them all helpless. Perhaps Lin Xiao was too busy to answer their calls? And indeed, that was indeed the case. In his room, Lin Xiao still sat at his desk, surveying his work. Finally, "It's done." Looking at the vast amount of draft paper he had consumed, Lin Xiao sighed softly. Even the 15-hour sage state only had less than half an hour left. Of course, no matter what, he had finally built his sieve machine, a combination of the sieve method and the circle method. He hadn't yet completed the task of conquering the Goldbach conjecture, but with the sieve machine already built, why would he worry about it? Keep going. He lowered his head once more, wrote down the equation representing the Goldbach conjecture, then directed his sieve machine and launched a charge at the conjecture. Clearly, the Goldbach conjecture lost its once solid, almost impenetrable defense against the threat of the sieve machine, and was ultimately conquered by Lin Xiao with overwhelming force. By this time, 2 hours had already passed. Finally done, Lin Xiao dropped his pen, leaned back in his chair, and yawned deeply. He had been sitting in this chair almost non-stop for 17 hours. Since returning to the hotel yesterday. Of course, he'd eaten a bit. A few chocolate bars, a bucket of instant noodles, and 2 bottles of water beside him. They'd been keeping him satiated for the past 10 hours. But he was mentally exhausted. Even without any physical exertion, brainstorming for so long would still leave one feeling incredibly tired. Then, the system's voice temporarily roused his spirits. Congratulations to the host for proving the Goldbach conjecture, achieving another important breakthrough in mathematics, taking into account the host's performance in the proof, this time's rewards. 800 math experience points, 30 truth points, and an answer worth 30 truth points. Congratulations to the host for advancing to Math Level 4. Your current level is 416/5000. Lin Xiao was stunned, then overjoyed. 800 math experience points. It truly was the Goldbach conjecture. And those 30 truth points had nearly doubled his truth points. However, the reward, An answer worth 30 truth points left him slightly stunned. Does that mean it's equivalent to a 30 truth point voucher? The system's voice chimed again. It's recommended that the host use it for practical applications that occasionally require luck. For fundamental theory, it's recommended that the host rely on independent research. Lin Xiao was stunned. Applying 30 truth points to practical problems that require luck? What did that mean? Suddenly, he quickly realized something. Aren't problems solved by luck similar to those in chemistry, materials science, biology, and other fields? While research and breakthroughs in these three disciplines can't be said to rely entirely on luck, they do have a significant impact. After all, countless new discoveries throughout history stemmed from luck and accidents. However, he was still some distance away from that, so he didn't need to worry about it for now. Then let it go for now. Without further consideration, Lin Xiao opened his personal dashboard and took a look at his current status. Host, Lin Xiao, Truth Points. 69.2, Universal Truth Branch Level, Mathematics, Level 4, 416, 5000, Chemistry, Level 1, 2/50, Physics, Level 2, 7/250, Biology, Level 1, 2/50, Materials Science, Level 1, 0/50, Informatics, Level 1, 0/50. His last paper on the Navier-Stokes equations had given him 50 physics experience points and 70 math experience points, raising his physics to level 2, increasing his brain development by 0.2%. Now, his math had advanced even further, reaching level 4. He nodded in satisfaction. Suddenly, when the question of brain development came up, he suddenly realized something. System, where's my brain development? The next moment, he felt a sudden heaviness in his head. His already exhausted brain was stunned for a moment. Lin Xiao covered his head and muttered, "Good fellow, you did that on purpose, didn't you?" The system's voice sounded indifferently. Mathematics has been upgraded to level 4, with a bonus of 0.5% brain development. 0.5%, Lin Xiao's eyes lit up. This meant his brain was now at 4.35% development? This was already higher than the 4.125% he'd achieved the previous time he'd used Sage State. However, he didn't feel the same clarity of mind he'd once had. Of course, this was also due to his current situation. 17 hours had passed since he'd returned to the hotel yesterday, and he'd been up for almost 21 or 22 hours. The exhaustion certainly made it impossible for him to feel the same way he'd felt before. I need some sleep, he had to, or else he'd be feeling restless. Of course, before that, he had to let Professor Su know, as he was next door. So he stood up and left the hotel. However, when he opened the door, he saw the door to the room next door had also opened. Several people had emerged from Professor Suji's room. Looking at their faces, they all seemed Chinese. He was about to raise his hand, wanting to greet his compatriots, when several people came up excitedly. "Mr. Lin, Mr. Lin, did you succeed?" Lin Xiao looked bewildered. "Who are you?" Realizing they hadn't introduced themselves yet, several people pulled out their work IDs and showed them to Lin Xiao. "We're CCTV reporters stationed in Paris. We've received instructions from the main station to interview you about proving the Goldbach conjecture." "Interview me? Proving the Goldbach conjecture?" Lin Xiao was stunned again. He had just completed the proof a few minutes ago, and they knew about it before he even mentioned it. At this moment, Suji also emerged from the room. "Lin Xiao, you're out?" Suji asked, somewhat surprised. Lin Xiao nodded. Seeing Lin Xiao's exhausted face, Suji couldn't help but ask, "You proved it?" "Yes." Suji's eyes were suddenly filled with shock. The Goldbach conjecture had actually been proved. Although he had suspected it long ago, hearing it suddenly was still a shock to him. "How did you do it?" Lin Xiao said. "Combine the circle method with the sieve method. Take advantage of the circle method's lack of parity issues, and completely address the sieve method's shortcomings. Then, combine it with a method from a previous RZiv paper, and you've pretty much solved it." Can the circle method and the sieve method be combined? Suji was even more incredulous. "I thought so at first, but then I tried it on the complex plane and found it worked." Lin Xiao smiled. "Then you want again?" "Oh no, Professor Su, I need to get some sleep." "I didn't sleep all night." Hearing this, Suji, though still wanting to ask more questions, nodded and said, "Okay, go to bed. Get some rest." The three reporters nearby had just heard Lin Xiao announce that he had proved the Goldbach conjecture and were immediately delighted. They thought it was a good opportunity. Wouldn't this give them first-hand information? But now, seeing Lin Xiao saying he needed to sleep again, they were suddenly anxious. Of course, it was impossible to tell Lin Xiao not to sleep directly, so one of the reporters said, "Mr. Lin, can we interview you after you've rested?" Lin Xiao remembered the three CCTV reporters and smiled. "Of course, no problem. Tomorrow, then. I need a good rest today. I haven't slept all day and all night." The reporters, pleased with Lin Xiao's agreement, thanked him and left him alone, watching him return to his room. They had also arranged to interview Professor Andrew Wiles. Chapter 138 is close to the truth. The day passed quickly. Lin Xiao slept for a full 12 hours. The next day, he began to experience the world of a brain developed at 4.35%. He felt as if nature was constantly caressing him. This state of mind made him feel as if he could easily solve a host of problems he had encountered. Of course, this was merely a subjective feeling, and couldn't truly affect objective reality. The scenarios depicted in Lucy were essentially non-existent. There was no scientific evidence that consciousness could directly influence reality. His stomach rumbled. The meager meal he had eaten yesterday was clearly insufficient, and he was now starving. Without further ado, he immediately went downstairs to the restaurant downstairs for a meal. Fortunately, French cuisine, as one of the world's three major cuisines, was quite good, at least it wasn't the food desert of Britain. After dinner, he gave an interview to the reporters, whose questions primarily focused on whether he had proved the Goldbach conjecture and related issues. After the interview, Lin Xiao offered a reminder, "By the way, don't rush to claim I've completed the proof. Ultimate success still needs to undergo peer review." While his proof of the Goldbach conjecture had clearly been approved by the system, as a young man, it was better to take things slowly. "Don't worry about that," the three CCTV reporters nodded with a smile. They had only ensured they were the first media outlet to interview Lin Xiao. Once Lin Xiao's proof was confirmed, they would be able to publish it first. "That's good," Lin Xiao nodded, not dwelling on it. Suddenly, his phone rang. He checked number. It was Professor Wiles. After the call was connected, he smiled and said, "Professor Wiles, what brings you to the table?" "Of course it's about the Goldbach conjecture," Wiles said. "I heard from several reporters from China that you completed the proof yesterday, but I thought you might need some rest, so I called you now. I wanted to ask if this is true." "It's true," Lin Xiao said. "I'll post the paper on our Ziv tonight, and it should be available tomorrow. I'm looking forward to it." "I wish you success," Wiles said. "By the way, where are you planning to present your paper?" Presentation. Lin Xiao was stunned. He hadn't considered this before. However, for a result as important as proving the Goldbach conjecture, a presentation to all mathematicians was inevitable. Then, Lin Xiao smiled and said, "I'm going back to China tomorrow, so I've chosen to stay in my home country, at my university." "Well, I should have guessed your choice," Wiles sighed. "I'd prefer you to be at Oxford, or even in Paris, but think about it, with such important results, it's obviously more appropriate to present them where you live." "Yes, then I look forward to your presentation." "Thank you," Lin Xiao said. Although he had experienced the pure academic atmosphere in France during his few days there and felt completely comfortable, and that day in the rotunda of the Poincaré Institute, so many people cheered him on for his success in solving this difficult problem, this was still a foreign land. While his own country had its flaws, it also had many good points, and after all, it was his home. He hung up the phone without further thought. He then began organizing all his theories and published his paper on Arziv. The next day, it was time to return home. He boarded the approximately 11-hour flight back home with Suji, Xiao Zhou, and Xiaoxi. By the time he landed, the mathematics world was probably already abuzz. Time flew by, and it was the next day. UCLA, California, USA. Terence Tao was sitting in his office, sipping coffee and surfing the internet. Inside, his graduate students were discussing something. "Wow, this photo is so cool. Yeah, that capture angle is fantastic." Hearing what the students were saying, Terence Tao couldn't help but be curious. Although his entire interest lay in mathematics, he shared his passion for whatever young people enjoyed. Back when he was a master's student, he even failed a course because he was playing Civilization. "What are you guys talking about?" he asked with a smile. Several students, upon hearing the professor's question, smiled and said, "Professor, it's about the Lin incident a few days ago. Someone shared a photo on Facebook. It's really nice." "Oh? Lin." This piqued Terence Tao's interest even more. He had, of course, heard about Lin Xiao's recent exploits. He'd learned that Lin Xiao seemed to have struck upon a new inspiration on the path to solving the Goldbach conjecture, so he had been keeping a close eye on related developments, such as on Arziv. Whenever Lin Xiao published a paper, he'd be notified immediately. "Professor, take a look." Seeing the professor's interest, several graduate students naturally stepped forward and showed the photo to Terence Tao. Tao, taking a look, couldn't help but marvel at the exquisite design of the photo. The photo showed a conference room with a historic atmosphere. Hundreds of other people were buzzing with discussion, their gazes fixed on a row at the front left. Their gazes converged on a single young man, head bowed, writing something. This young man stood in stark contrast to the clamor. The photo was titled "He's Approaching the Truth." Wonderful, Tao couldn't help but exclaim in admiration. It was indeed a truly remarkable photo, already garnering tens of thousands of likes and thousands of comments. Looking at the posting time, it was only an hour old. Many people probably wish they could be the star of this photo. Just then, a graduate student nearby asked, "Professor, do you think you can prove the Goldbach conjecture?" "Let's wait, maybe we'll have news in a few days." After Tao finished speaking, he glanced at his computer and suddenly saw a notification on his Arziv account. A user he followed had posted an article. He raised his eyebrows and quickly opened the notification. Sure enough, it was posted by Xiao Lin. Lin Xiao's paper was titled, "Any even number greater than 2 can be expressed as the sum of two prime numbers." This was the exact statement of the modern Goldbach conjecture. Tao couldn't help but feel a sense of astonishment. Had the young Chinese man, who had discussed this problem with him just 2 months ago, actually proved it? "Professor, what's wrong?" his graduate student asked, noticing Tao's sudden fixation on his computer. "Lin, it might have been proven." Tao's response stunned the graduate students. Tao didn't say anything to his students, but downloaded the paper. After he refreshed the page, he found that the number of downloads of this paper exceeded 10. Obviously, many people are paying attention to it. However, Terence Tao did not care about these things, but read the paper. Seeing that the professor was serious, his graduate students did not disturb him. In this way, time passed slowly. It took Terence Tao a full 4 hours to finish reading the paper of more than 60 pages. But at this time he had to express his shock in his heart. He did not find any mistakes. Rigorous and fluent, just like Lin Xiao's previous paper. He actually did it, combined the sieve method and the circle method. This incredible approach, even when he mentioned it to Lin Xiao before, he did not have high expectations. Then, he couldn't wait to open his commonly used social software and posted a status on it. "Lin Xiao, he is close to the truth. Please give me a monthly ticket." Chapter 139, Prepare to face the challenge of mathematics. China, Shangjing International Airport. A massive plane streaked through the sky, finally landing on the runway. The massive wheels churned with a resounding roar, and the plane's speed rapidly decreased, eventually slowing to a crawl. "Let's go, boys," Suji called to the 3 young men, and they disembarked and made their way to the arrivals hall. However, upon reaching the arrivals hall, they saw several people holding signs at the exit. On the signs was a clear Lin Xiao. They were all startled. "Lin Xiao, are they looking for you?" "I don't know." Lin Xiao shook his head. Since no one had informed him beforehand, he certainly had no idea. Maybe they were someone with the same name. Suji suddenly remembered something and said, "I guess they're looking for you." He had barely finished speaking when the people holding the signs seemed to have noticed them as well. They then approached Lin Xiao. "Excuse me, Mr. Lin Xiao," one of them asked. "It's me," Lin Xiao said, revealing that these people were indeed looking for him. A smile broke out on the man's face, and he said, "I'm a secretary from the National Academy Secretariat. Our leaders would like to meet with you and have a chat." Lin Xiao was immediately shocked. "What? The leaders of the National Academy wanted to see him?" Xiaozhou and Xiaoxi, who were standing nearby, were also shocked. Is this the treatment for proving the Goldbach conjecture? They looked at Lin Xiao with nothing but envy. This is what academic achievement means. Suji, standing nearby, couldn't help but look surprised. When he saw these people, he had a feeling that they were all from the National Academy. After all, he often interacted with him. Then, thinking back to the CCTV reporter who had come directly to interview Lin Xiao, he felt that he had guessed it. After all, the Goldbach conjecture was still very influential in China. When Chen Jingren proved the 1 plus 2 equation, his contribution during this special period became a publicity event, and later a writer named Su Qi wrote a report on it, which was published in People's Literature. Back then, the influence of People's Literature was immense. Back then, before mobile phones, computers, or the modern internet, these articles were the only entertainment people had. Thus, people became aware of the Goldbach conjecture. Although they didn't understand it, they still considered it remarkable, especially since it was preceded by the fact that it was a world-class problem and solved by a Chinese. At the time, people felt a sense of pride in such achievements, and this, in turn, elevated the Goldbach conjecture's reputation to a higher level. This is why the Goldbach conjecture is a favorite problem for Chinese amateur scientists to prove. Now, a young mathematical prodigy, not just an amateur scientist but also a renowned figure in the international mathematical community, has proven the conjecture. Naturally, the government will take notice, especially given its significance. Perhaps Lin Xiao will get another CCTV interview? Once Lin Xiao's work passes peer review and garners unanimous approval from the mathematical community, the government will undoubtedly give this young person the highest regard. The Chinese mathematical community needs a representative figure. Having missed out on the likes of Zhu Chengtuang and Zhang Yiden before, and now with the emergence of an even more exceptional young man, it's hard to say what will become of them if they miss out again. And that's just domestically. Internationally, there's likely to be even greater attention. Time magazine might even approach him for an interview. Top journals like Science and Nature will be willing to accept his papers. Various mathematics-related institutions and organizations will extend invitations to him, and there's also the promise of fame and fortune. Su Ji suddenly wondered what Lin Xiao would choose. Could he withstand such temptation? Furthermore, he had experienced the academic purity of France, and I'm sure Lin Xiao felt it too. It's precisely for this reason that mathematicians worldwide flock there. Where in China could such an atmosphere be found? As the former dean of the School of Mathematical Sciences at Beijing University, Su Ji had no idea. Just like at the end of December last year, Su Chen, with whom Lin Xiao had spoken so often, left China for a professorship at MIT. Su Chen had originally returned from the United States on his own initiative, but now he's gone back. Thinking about it, it's a bit of a shame. On the bright side, Su Chen's move to MIT is also a good thing for those Chinese math PhD students there. At least they can admit a few Chinese students every year. Ultimately, Su Ji could only wish Lin Xiao the life he wanted. Of course, Lin Xiao wouldn't refuse such an offer. After saying goodbye to Professor Su Ji, Xiao Zhou, and Xiao Shi, he boarded a special car and headed to the National Academy. After waiting for a moment in a spacious reception room, the door opened, and a bespectacled, humble-looking elderly man entered. Seeing this old man, a man he often saw on TV and in the news, Lin Xiao quickly stood up, took the initiative to approach him, and respectfully greeted. "Hello." The old man smiled kindly and said, "Lin Xiao, I'm sorry to have asked you to come here so suddenly." Hearing this unsolicited apology, Lin Xiao was flattered. He extended both hands and shook the old man's hand, saying, "It's nothing. I'm honored to meet you." "It's not an honor." The old man shook his head. "When three people walk together, there must be one who can teach me. I admire your achievements in mathematics." Then he pointed to the seat next to him and said, "Please sit down." "There's no need to stand and talk." Lin Xiao nodded and sat down. The secretary next to him walked over and poured tea. "The TV station interviewed you earlier, and you said you had proved the Goldbach conjecture, right?" "Yes," Lin Xiao nodded. "Are you sure?" Lin Xiao smiled and said, "I can't guarantee it 100%, but I'm 99% sure." The old man was stunned. Then he couldn't help laughing. "Then it seems that I'm very sure." Then he sighed. Goldbach's conjecture. In the 1970s, I read the report in People's Literature and learned what 1 plus 2 was that Mr. Chen proved. At that time, I was also studying in Peking University, and I felt that you people who study mathematics are really amazing. The whole thing is incomprehensible to ordinary people. Later, I paid attention to it for a while, and the chief designer also mentioned it specifically. The old man gave Lin Xiao a thumbs up. "Now, you have put an end to it completely. Thank you for completing this regret for me." The old man patted Lin Xiao on the shoulder, and his tone was full of nostalgia. Lin Xiao smiled and said, "You're welcome. For me, just solving a difficult problem that I'm interested in is enough to satisfy me." "That's true." The old man smiled slightly, then suddenly asked, "Now that you've completed the proof, what are your plans?" Lin Xiao was stunned and said, "Although I've completed the proof, I still need to give an academic presentation and peer review to gain recognition from the mathematical community. So I plan to give a presentation at school first." Hearing Lin Xiao's words, the old man quickly realized the benefits this would bring to China. "Will mathematicians from home and abroad come to your presentation?" Lin Xiao nodded. "Yes, many famous mathematicians will probably come." It wasn't that he thought he could attract people, but rather the reputation of the Goldbach conjecture. As a jewel in the crown of mathematics, now that it had finally been plucked, it was clearly an event of immense appeal to every mathematician. Whether they understood it or not, simply to join in the excitement and participate in such a historic mathematical event was worth going to, and no one wanted to miss it. Even though China was a place unfamiliar to these mathematicians and they couldn't speak the language, they were happy to go. The old man nodded. "I understand." At this time, the secretary next to him walked up and whispered a few words to the old man. After listening to him, the old man nodded slightly, then turned to look at Lin Xiao and said with a smile, "Lin Xiao, proving the Goldbach conjecture is your own achievement, but it's also a contribution and a glory for the country. As long as you can continue to bring glory to the country in the future, the country will definitely not let you down." Hearing the old man's words, Lin Xiao nodded and said, "Don't worry, I will." The old man smiled and nodded, then stood up, grabbed Lin Xiao's hand and patted it. With the amiable look of an elder, he said, "That's it. Although we only chatted for a few minutes, I still hope to talk more with a young man like you. Next time we have the chance, let's talk again. Don't refuse then." Lin Xiao also quickly stood up and said with a smile, "I definitely won't refuse. It's a deal," the old man added, looking at Lin Xiao with a smile. Lin Xiao was stunned, then nodded heavily. "It's a deal." Lin Xiao left the place with another secretary to see him off. Every word the old man said held a profound meaning, and with his 4.35% brain development, he certainly could hear it. And every response he gave came from the heart. He boarded an Audi with a rather impressive license plate, which would take him to Kyoto University. However, once he was in the car, his phone suddenly rang. He checked number, and it was from the United States. Puzzled, he answered the call, and the voice on the other end rang out, "Is this Mr. Lin Xiao?" "It's me." "Hello, I'm Trenwell, Secretary General of the American Mathematical Society. We cordially invite you to present your proof of the Goldbach conjecture at our joint mathematical meeting on January 16th. We are willing to cover all your expenses and award you honorary fellowship of the American Mathematical Society after the meeting. Would you like to?" Lin Xiao was stunned. A joint mathematical meeting of the American Mathematical Society? He had heard of it before. It was a prestigious mathematical conference. The treatment offered was quite good. And the status of honorary fellow of the American Mathematical Society was quite impressive. However, Lin Xiao simply said, "I'm sorry, but I've decided to give my lecture at my school, Shangjing University. If possible, I'd like you to help spread the word." "Thank you, then I wish your lecture a success." "Thank you." After hanging up the phone, Lin Xiao thought for a moment. He had rejected the invitation, but then asked them to help spread the word about his upcoming lecture in China. It seemed a bit awkward. Then he shook his head. Never mind. However, he should spread the word about his academic lecture at Shangjing University. He was ready to face the test of the global mathematical community. Chapter 140. Thousands of people gathered. Academic report at the Great Hall of the People. "Have you heard? It seems the Goldbach conjecture has been proven." "Of course I heard. It's that guy from China. I heard he's only 18, but I don't know if he really succeeded. I just can't believe it was actually proven." "Didn't Professor Terence Tao say he succeeded?" "Professor Tao said so, of course." "Professor Tao also said Lin Xiao is close to the truth." "Where is it?" "Show me." On foreign forums, many students interested in or studying mathematics have heard the recent news about the Goldbach conjecture. Almost everyone has heard of this astonishing news, even more astonishing than the initial confirmation of the distribution of Mersenne primes. And the first person to believe that Lin Xiao had succeeded was Terence Tao. His post has already attracted countless onlookers. Clearly, The recognition of a Fields Medal winner is considered by many to be tantamount to declaring Lin Xiao's success. Especially since that person is Terence Tao. Of course, Tao is not the only one who believes Lin Xiao has succeeded. Mathematical giants including Sarnak, Pompier, Sarnak, and Wiles all stated that they could not yet see any flaws in Lin Xiao's proof. The fact that so many professors agreed seemed to confirm that Lin Xiao's proof was correct, at least to the average person. Consequently, Lin Xiao's name once again appeared frequently in international news and forums, the last time being after his presentation at the International Congress of Mathematicians. The photo, titled "He is Approaching the Truth," also went viral, appearing in nearly every online media outlet, both domestically and internationally, when reporting on the event. With a widespread publicity from domestic media, news of Lin Xiao's proof of the Goldbach conjecture spread rapidly throughout China, spreading at an almost terrifying rate. Anyone who saw this news immediately thought of the Goldbach conjecture. Even if they didn't know what it was, they knew it was a world-class problem. So, they immediately shared the news with their friends or in group chats. Suddenly, the number of people who knew about it soared from the hundreds to millions, tens of millions, and even hundreds of millions. Anyone surfing the internet during that time would have heard this news. Even players in the heat of Summoner's Rift might share it. As a result, news of this news practically skyrocketed to the top of all trending searches, even on Weibo. The top trending topic, originally a brother who had a cut on his finger in the theater, was snatched away. Now, the top trending topic was Lin Xiao proves the Goldbach conjecture. It was no longer Xuan Zugong, college student, as before, but now it was Lin Xiao's name. Anyone who frequently surfs the internet knows Lin Xiao, not to mention his already 900,000 plus followers. After Elder Yang's high praise, his fan following surged again, and now, breaking 1 million is practically a sure thing. Clicking on the trending search reveals just how popular it is, nearly 200,000 likes and a whopping 50,000 comments. Almost all of the comments express admiration for Lin Xiao. Goldbach's conjecture. God Lin isn't human. God Lin, please restrain your powers. I saw this problem in an elementary school textbook. At the time, I thought, does 1 + 1 = 2 need proof? Later, I realized I was overthinking it. As the head of the 4 major insane asylums, only God Lin is above the world, more than above the world. He's transcended the 3 realms and beyond the 5 elements. What peak is at the end of mathematics? Seeing God Lin, the way becomes empty. This is fucking amazing JPG. Everyone was in shock, not a single comment was negative. Of course, if you looked further down, you might find a few amateur scientists arguing that they were the first to prove it, but that was irrelevant. Of course, as the protagonist, Lin Xiao's Weibo post naturally received millions, even tens of millions, of views. A bunch of people came to his Weibo post to verify whether it was true. In Peking University's Yanbi Park, Lin Xiao, who had already returned home, was leaning on his bed, stroking his breasts, which he hadn't seen in nearly 10 days, while scrolling through his phone. Looking at the Weibo post that kept refreshing with 99 plus views, he shook his head helplessly. These netizens. Although most of the foreign professors believed that there was no problem with his proof, after all, it had not been peer-reviewed, so he couldn't say that he had completed the proof. Wasn't this trending search just causing trouble? After thinking about it, he took the initiative to post a Weibo post. While I'm confident I've completed the proof, it still needs unanimous approval from the international mathematical community. So please don't rush. If you're interested and have the time, please come to the Great Hall of Shengjing University on January 19th, where I'll be giving a talk on the Goldbach conjecture. Yes, January 19th was the date he had scheduled for his talk on the Goldbach conjecture, and today, January 10th, is still 9 days away. This long window of time gives mathematicians from abroad ample time to prepare. It also provides ample time for both Kyoto University and domestic preparation. Kyoto University has made extensive preparations to properly welcome these mathematicians from around the world and to successfully host this academic conference. The Shangjing government has also made preparations. The last time so many internationally renowned mathematicians gathered in China, in Shangjing, was the 2002 International Congress of Mathematicians, when over 4,000 mathematicians attended. Who knows how many more mathematicians will be here this time? The China of 2002 and the China of today, 17 years later, are vastly different. While China back then left a good impression on these mathematicians, none of them stayed or even offered to collaborate. Perhaps after this experience, they'll be willing to stay in China in the future? Even frequent visits to China, perhaps fostering collaboration, could be a significant boost to a country so eager for talent. The importance of mathematics is self-evident. As a fundamental discipline, its power, once applied to applied fields, is far more profound. Therefore, China urgently needs more mathematical talent. Of course, Lin Xiao didn't consider these matters for the time being. It wasn't something he needed to consider. What he needed to do was tell the world that the Goldbach conjecture was a thing of the past, replaced by the Goldbach-Lin theorem. Time passed quickly, and it was January 17th. At the exit of the arrival hall at Shanghai International Airport, a bright sign read, in Chinese, English, French, Russian, and other languages, "Welcome to Shanghai for the academic presentation on the Goldbach conjecture." Other staff members were also present, providing translation and directions to the foreign mathematicians. Meanwhile, inside the arrival hall, two individuals of Chinese descent were chatting. Anyone familiar with the leading figures in mathematics would likely recognize them, Xing Tunyu and Terence Tao. Their destination, naturally, was the Goldbach conjecture. Tao, having previously discussed the proof of the Goldbach conjecture, was a natural fit. Enya, both as a Chinese and a mathematician, was well suited to attending the presentation. "Professor Chu, what a coincidence, you're here too." Tao, not expecting to run into you after getting off the plane, smiled and walked over to greet him. Upon seeing Terence Tao, Chu's eyes lit up, and he smiled. "It's quite a coincidence indeed. Of course, the Goldbach conjecture, especially the paper, I didn't see any problems with, so it made me want to come. Well, I'm already looking forward to the day after tomorrow." Terence Tao nodded. "The only pity is that young man is from Shengjing University." At this point, Chu shook his head again. Terence Tao didn't ask any further questions. He had heard about the conflict between Chu and Shengjing University. Without further ado, the two of them left together. Reaching the exit, they were greeted by the receptionist, got into a car, and headed to their hotel. And they weren't the only ones. Mathematicians continued to arrive, with winners of the Fields Medal, the Abel Prize, the Wolf Prize, and so on becoming regulars. However, as each mathematician arrived and the number of registered participants was counted, Shengjing University and the Shengjing Municipal People's Government came to a frustrating yet somewhat surprising conclusion. This time, over 5,000 mathematicians, math enthusiasts, journalists, and people from all walks of life traveled from far and wide, all hoping to witness the proof of the Goldbach conjecture. And this was just from abroad. Over 4,000 people from China had signed up. The Goldbach conjecture's influence within the Chinese public was fully demonstrated at this moment. Finally, directives were issued to clear the Great Hall of the People's Auditorium for this grand mathematical event, solving the venue problem. When the news spread, everyone involved was in disbelief. However, only the Great Hall of the People in all of Beijing could accommodate such a grand occasion. 10,000 people. This was a monumental event, worthy of being remembered in the annals of mathematics. Even the proof of Fermat's last theorem didn't boast such a grand occasion, of course, due to the limitations of information and transportation at the time. But regardless, this was history. And finally, January 19th arrived. Chapter 141 History is created at this moment. 2019. China, Shangjing, 9:30 a.m. The Great Hall of the People, the 10,000-person auditorium. By this time, the place was already bustling with activity. Every seat on the three tiers was packed, and even the corridors were crowded. Only about 9,000 people had registered, but the number of people who actually wanted to attend exceeded 10,000. This put a great deal of pressure on the staff, who had to coordinate the flow of over 10,000 people. But they also couldn't help but sigh in amazement at how a single math problem could attract so many people. In all their time working here, they had never seen a conference draw over 10,000 people, let alone an academic lecture. When they learned that the auditorium had been chosen as the venue for this academic lecture, they were quite surprised. Meanwhile, several television cameramen had already set up their cameras, capturing every angle. The lecture would be broadcast live worldwide, ensuring that this historic event would be recorded and passed down through the ages. The people sitting in the front rows of the first floor were all renowned mathematicians from around the world, all engaged in a discussion. "I can't believe you're all here. Didn't you complain earlier about China being too far away? Didn't you say you didn't believe anyone could prove the Goldbach conjecture?" And that's why you wouldn't come. Health God, you're here too, how could I not come? After all, I proved the weak Goldbach conjecture, and now, only a few years later, someone has proved the strong Goldbach conjecture. I have to come. Health God, the prover of the weak Goldbach conjecture in 2013, holds a high reputation in the mathematical community. That's true. Faultings, you're here to join in the fun. What do you mean by joining in the fun? If anyone's here to join in the fun, it should be you, Deline. Haha, you're definitely unaware of Lin Xiao and I'm friends, right? I don't need to know. Professor Chu, Professor Tao, I didn't expect we'd be sitting together again. This venue is truly grand. Of course it is. This venue holds great significance in China. Chu Chengtong smiled faintly. At least it wasn't at Shengjing University. I'm sure the people there must be disappointed. Professor Wiles, Witten, a physicist like you're here too. Come on, I'm the only physicist to have won a Fields Medal. Of course I have to be here. These world-class mathematicians chatted before the presentation even began, but they were actually quite impatient for it to begin. They had been looking forward to this day for far too long. Besides these mathematicians, the audience seats on the second and third floors were mainly filled with people just joining in the fun, including students from various universities in Beijing. These students, too, gazed at the scene in amazement. There are so many people. Is Master Lin going to give a presentation in front of so many people? Just thinking about it makes my legs tremble. Yes, giving an academic presentation in front of so many people. How much pressure must that be? And when they considered that he was barely 20 years old, they felt the immense gap even more. Moreover, the thought of him, barely 20 years old, giving an academic presentation in the Great Hall of the People and being the center of attention for over 10,000 people filled their hearts with excitement. A true man should be like this. But clearly, among this younger generation, only Lin Xiao could pull it off. Time slipped by, and everyone was already anticipating the moment it officially began. The presentation was scheduled to begin at 10 in the morning, and there were less than 5 minutes left. Lin Xiao sat in a seat backstage. Sitting across from him was the Secretary General of the State Council, who had come in person. Are you nervous? Over 10,000 eyes, the Secretary General asked with a smile. Lin Xiao smiled. It's impossible not to be nervous, but I've given presentations to thousands of people before, so I'm quite experienced. That's good. The Secretary General nodded slightly, sighing. When I was a few years older than you, still a factory worker, I was a bit apprehensive even when addressing hundreds of people in our factory, let alone so many. You won't be worried anymore now, haha. After all, you're one of the most outstanding young people I've ever met. The Secretary General smiled, checked the time, and said, okay, you're about to go on stage. I won't keep you any longer. Lin Xiao nodded, picked up the cup beside him, took a sip, moistened his throat, and then stood up, waiting for the moment to arrive. A few minutes later, a staff member came up to him and said, Mr. Lin, the host has finished the introductions. You may go on stage. Yes, Lin Xiao took a deep breath and looked at the packed auditorium. Honestly, when he learned the venue had been changed to the Great Hall of the People, he felt a bit surprised. He'd actually been able to deliver an academic presentation there. It had never occurred to him before. After all, he didn't recall the Great Hall of the People hosting a purely academic conference. The 2002 International Congress of Mathematicians, the opening ceremony, had been held there, and subsequent conferences had been held at the Shangjing International Convention Center. He gazed at the spacious podium. Next, he was about to step onto it and present the proof of the Goldbach conjecture to the over 10,000 people present. He was inevitably nervous, but since he was already here, how could he back down? Moreover, being the sole protagonist in such a venue, in a nutshell, wasn't that what a true man should be like? His gaze gradually hardened, and he took a firm step, stepping out into the audience's field of vision. The auditorium, already quiet, had been hushed by the host's introduction to the academic presentation. But as soon as he took the stage, the room erupted in applause. Over 10,000 people roared with applause, welcoming the young mathematical prodigy. Lin Xiao, dressed in a suit and tie, stepped to the center of the arena, treading the chorus of applause. Keep going, the host whispered an encouraging word. This host, a professional TV host and Lin Xiao's senior, was known for his motto, Kyoto University isn't bad. It was said that he volunteered to host the talk, though it was also rumored that the professional hosts were fiercely competing for the spot. Lin Xiao smiled and nodded. Thank you, The host then left the arena, and Lin Xiao stepped to the microphone, surveying his surroundings and calming himself. He then spoke, "Hello, friends from all over the world, and all over the country. I'm Lin Xiao. Since this is an academic lecture, I'll be delivering it in purely academic terms, so I won't say much else. Let's get straight to the point." The next moment, the multimedia screen behind him flashed, revealing the theme of the lecture, and Lin Xiao began to speak. Any even number greater than 2 can be expressed as the sum of 2 prime numbers. This is 1/3 of the eighth of Hilbert's 23 problems. It's the crown jewel of mathematics, the pinnacle of number theory, a problem that has stumped the mathematical community for over 300 years, and today, here, before all my colleagues and friends present, I can confidently declare that we can cross it out on our notebooks. Lin Xiao's words gave everyone a sense of confidence. Then, let's begin. Lin Xiao finished speaking, and the multimedia behind him flashed again, marking the beginning of his theory. First, I'd like to demonstrate my new tool, the sieve of circles method. Combining the sieve of circles method creates a brand new and perfect method, which I will focus on next. Introduction to sieve theory. Let J be any set of prime numbers with J, and I be any interval. Then, m, pjp, 6 equals 1, m0, I1. As Lin Xiao began, the mathematicians in the front row all looked intently. Although they had already read the Arziv paper countless times over the past few days, hearing Lin Xiao explain it in person from beginning to end might help them uncover some minor issues. However, while the mathematicians understood, others didn't. After all, this was an academic lecture, covering primarily specialized topics, and the majority of those who came to join in the fun were there to sort things out. They had all heard of the Goldbach conjecture, and they came from both China and abroad. Of those who truly understood, even a small part, perhaps 3,000 would be considered a good number. And the number of people who had read Lin Xiao's paper and completed it in its entirety was even lower, with 200 considered a good number. Regardless, there are only so many top mathematicians in the world. Even if all the winners of the Fields Medal, Abel Prize, Wolf Prize, and Crafoord Prize were added together, there wouldn't even be 200, not to mention the numerous duplicate winners and those who have passed away. Mathematics is, therefore, a game for geniuses, and only geniuses can thrive in it. For the average person wanting to dive headfirst into mathematics, it's best to turn to applied mathematics as soon as possible. Of course, for those who didn't understand, they weren't here to understand Lin Xiao's words, but simply to witness that historic moment. And so, time passed slowly, and Lin Xiao didn't rush, but slowly recounted his story. The great hall of the people had reserved half a day for him to give his academic presentation, so he didn't have to worry about time. His only task was to make this presentation perfect. Assuming there is no scaling between cops, we have the following embedding: Cn, m, ct, m, cs, m, rcm, m. From this we can obtain. Next, we will introduce the concept of several special partition circle mappings. Let Mn and Cn, m, 6 equals b cops containing the axes law, b, by transforming CPP-Cn, m, along the so-called flip axis law. As Lin Xiao's presentation gradually entered the key points, the mathematicians in the front row looked more and more attentively. By the time Lin Xiao had passed this part, everyone was in awe. "This is amazing," Health couldn't help but exclaim. "This is what I wanted but couldn't touch." The person sitting next to him couldn't help but nod. The person next to him was Wendell Werner, the 2006 Fields Medal winner. He and Helfgott were both professors at the École Normale Supérieure in Paris. He also praised, but I didn't attend that Bourbaki seminar. Now that I think about it, it's such a shame, I didn't go back then either, and that's a shame too. Helfgott also shook his head. It would have been perfect to witness the entire process of the prover of the Goldbach conjecture, from the moment of inspiration to the final proof. Especially for him, the mathematician who proved the weak Goldbach conjecture. Wendell and Werner watched Lin Xiao's progress as the sieve method gradually became complete. I was 38 when I won the Fields Medal. Now, he's not even 20. If he wins the Fields Medal at the next International Congress of Mathematicians, he'll have raised the age of the youngest recipient by 6 years. Helfgott also nodded. Although he didn't win the Fields Medal, he understood the importance of Lin Xiao's successful proof of the strong Goldbach conjecture. Of course, mathematicians don't care about the proof of the Goldbach conjecture, they care about the tools developed in the process, and the sieve method is undoubtedly an extremely important tool. From now on, the mathematical world will have 4 terms named after Lin Xiao: Lin's group transformation method, Lin's conjecture, Lin's sieve method, and the Goldbach-Lin theorem. So far, our sieve method is complete. Next, let's use it to solve the Goldbach conjecture. As the pages of the PowerPoint turned, Lin Xiao completed the core part of his presentation. The next step was obvious. All the mathematicians in the audience also showed relieved expressions. They could handle the following work. But they really couldn't handle the sieve method. It only took about 10 minutes, and the PowerPoint only took up 4 pages. Lin Xiao stopped explaining the theory on the PowerPoint. Then, looking at the silent audience, he slowly took a few steps forward and smiled. So, as you can see, we can prove that any even number greater than 2 can be expressed as the sum of 2 prime numbers. Over 200 years ago, the letter Goldbach, living in Moscow, sent to Euler in St. Petersburg, plunged the mathematical world into a state of confusion. Now, let me repeat what I said before. I can confidently declare that it can be crossed out in our notebooks. A moment of silence fell in the auditorium of 10,000 people, as if time had been paused. But then, thunderous applause erupted again, and the entire audience rose, offering their most enthusiastic response to the young man standing at the podium. History is being made at this moment. To avoid being accused of fragmentation, I've written a little more. Today, 3 chapters total over 10,000 words. Please give me your monthly votes. Chapter 142: Worldwide Attention. Unbelievable, brilliant, the mathematicians in the front row applauded and exclaimed in amazement. They had hoped to uncover some overlooked issues in Lin Xiao's presentation, but throughout the entire presentation, Lin Xiao's presentation was fluent and concise, with no unclear points. Perhaps with a more solid foundation, the other listeners might also be able to understand how Lin Xiao derived his theory. They could only describe such a performance as brilliant. Wiles, standing in the audience, clapped his hands, a look of emotion in his eyes. This scene was so similar to his own back in the day. He whispered, "Lin did it better than me." "Oh? Why?" asked Edward Witten, who sat next to Wiles. Edward Witten, the originator of M-theory and the only physicist to win a Fields Medal. After Wiles left the Institute for Advanced Study, the two remained colleagues, naturally maintaining a close relationship. Wiles said, "I originally thought I could complete my final proof in front of the entire audience, but unfortunately, I failed the first time." Do you think he succeeded? Perhaps, like you, he was posed with a fatal question at the end of this season. No, look at the rigor of this young man's proof, and you'll know it's impossible. Wiles shook his head, looking at the young man on the stage. In their mathematical community, it was such a vibrant face. Ask others what they think of Lin Xiao's entire presentation, and you'll see it's even better than his last presentation at the Mathematicians' Congress. Back then, there was a problem with Lin Xiao's proof, and it was Professor Wiles who ultimately asked Lin Xiao the most crucial question, and then Lin Xiao answered it. Now, Lin Xiao has made up for this shortcoming. That's true, Witten nodded. Wiles smiled, looking at Lin Xiao with a look of high hope from a senior for a junior. Wiles and Witten weren't the only ones who were deeply moved. From professors like Sarnak and Deline from abroad to Suji and Yuanyer from China, they all offered their applause for Lin Xiao's performance in the presentation. Over 200 years have passed since the Goldbach conjecture was first proposed, inspiring countless great mathematicians to pursue its research, yet it has also caused countless regrets and become a thorn in the hearts of countless others. That simple letter, originally sent by Goldbach to Euler for advice, has endured countless years. Until this day, over 270 years later, it finally rested on the path of mathematical history, etched in 2019, leaving the column of unsolved problems in the halls of mathematics and joining the column of mathematical theorems. Everyone seemed to breathe a sigh of relief, as the mathematical community had once again overcome a major obstacle. Meanwhile, Lin Xiao, on the stage, listened to the applause from the audience, a smile on his face. Thus, his presentation was complete. Honestly, as he began to present his theory, his initial nervousness vanished without a trace. He forgot about the audience he was facing, and all that remained was academic rigor and seriousness. It wasn't until then that he realized he was facing the gazes of tens of thousands of people. All in all, it felt pretty good. He just enjoyed the tidal wave of applause until it gradually died down. Then, he said, "Now, those who have questions, you may ask them." He looked around for a moment, but no one raised their hands. This surprised him. Did anyone have any questions? He wondered if he hadn't explained himself clearly, so he repeated, "Now, those who have questions about the process, you may ask them," but after a while, no one raised their hands. The audience looked around and saw that no one had any questions. Of course, the people with questions here only referred to the mathematicians in the front row. Those in the back rows had questions everywhere, but it was obvious that they couldn't stand up to ask. The mathematicians in the front row were also somewhat surprised that no one had noticed the problem. However, this was to be expected. After all, everyone had already reviewed Lin Xiao's paper. If no problems were found when they reviewed it, it wasn't surprising that there were still no problems now. Seeing this, Lin Xiao smiled, clearly meaning that his report was a perfect success. He smiled slightly, took a deep breath, and announced, "Since no one has any questions, I think my report will end here. Thank you all for coming." He bowed deeply, and the audience erupted in applause again. The applause continued as Lin Xiao turned and left the podium. Even after he returned to the backstage, the enthusiastic applause was still audible. Clearly, the end of the report did not mean the end of the matter. The attention Lin Xiao subsequently received went far beyond this. The simultaneous online live stream of the presentation alone attracted hundreds of thousands of viewers. The moment they saw Lin Xiao complete his proof, their enthusiasm was fully expressed in the explosive barrage of comments. Netizens then flooded various online platforms, including Weibo, to discuss the issue. Lin Xiao's original Weibo post had stated that his work still needed peer review, but now that his presentation had concluded without a single prominent mathematician raising any questions, didn't that mean it had already been accepted by the mathematical community? Suddenly, netizens flooded the post with comments. "God, Lin is being too modest. Forget the Peking University auditorium and head straight to the Great Hall of the People. Why is God Lin a god? First, the Goldbach conjecture. God Lin, I traveled back from January 19th. Let me tell you a secret. You gave your presentation at the Great Hall of the People, and afterward, no one raised any questions. Your proof is a success. You traveled back from the 19th, so why did you speak on the 19th? Because time can only be kept in the 19th Doge. Now that Master Lin has even proved the Goldbach conjecture, isn't it time for the Millennium Problem? Master Lin, go for it." The netizens' enthusiasm was unimaginable. Originally, this post had just over 10,000 replies, but after the live stream, the number of replies seemed to take off again, breaking through 30,000 and approaching 40,000. This caused Lin Xiao's post to suddenly climb into the top 10 trending searches. In addition to his post titled "Lin Xiao Proves Goldbach's Conjecture," the top 10 trending searches also included two related searches: "How difficult is it to prove Goldbach's conjecture?" and "Master Lin, how difficult is it to prove Goldbach's conjecture?" topped the list, reaching over 10 million views. After all, most people don't have a concrete concept of the Goldbach conjecture, only knowing it's a world-class problem. Through this trending search, they finally understood its significance in the mathematical community. This only deepened their genuine admiration for Lin Xiao. He was truly a top student, effortlessly achieving something no one else could. Of course, Lin Xiao didn't have time to pay attention to what was happening online. After finishing his report and returning to the backstage, he was bombarded with calls. "Hello, Mr. Lin Xiao, I'm a reporter from the Shangjing Daily. Could I take a moment of your time to interview you? Sorry, I don't have time right now." "Hello, Mr. Lin Xiao, I'm a reporter from Guanxia.com. May I ask?" "Sorry, that's inconvenient." "Hello." Lin Xiao was helpless. Why were all the calls coming from reporters? Mr. Lin Xiao, Mr. Lin Xiao, son, did you prove it successfully? "Sorry, I don't have time." Lin Xiao, who had just spoken unconsciously, suddenly snapped back to reality. That voice sounded like his father's. He checked number, and it was indeed his father. "Hello, Dad, it's you. I thought you were some reporter." Lin Guao smiled and said, "Your mom and I were watching your live stream. I've heard of your Goldbach conjecture before. How did it turn out?" "It's definitely okay. Don't worry," Lin Xiao said with a smile. "Yeah, that's good. Your mom and dad both believe in you," Lin Guowen said. "By the way, Chinese New Year is coming up soon. Are you coming home then?" Lin Xiao was stunned. Chinese New Year? He thought about the time. It was almost late January, so Chinese New Year was definitely around the corner. Time flies. He sighed slightly, then said, "I'll definitely be back." That's good, Lin Xiao smiled, then said, let's not talk about anything else. Just enjoy yourself, okay? Then, Lin Xiao hung up. But as he expected, right after he hung up, another call came in. I guess it's from some media outlet again, Lin Xiao shook his head. It seemed he'd have to mute his phone later. This was the last call he would receive. Hello, Mr. Lin. This is the editorial office of Science. Have you decided which journal will publish your paper proving the Goldbach conjecture? If not, we invite you to publish it in Science, where we'll feature your work on the cover. Would you be interested? Lin Xiao was immediately surprised. He'd thought it was another media outlet calling, but it turned out to be Science inviting him to submit. Science and Nature, two of the world's top comprehensive journals, receive submissions daily from all over the world. Their ability to attract so many submissions is naturally due to their exceptionally high impact factors. Science's impact factor is over 40. Furthermore, they were planning to feature Lin Xiao's work on the cover, which was even more remarkable. Science magazine features around 50 articles per issue, and for it to be featured on the cover of an issue clearly demonstrates the significance of this achievement. It also demonstrates the importance the Science editorial office places on the proof of the Goldbach conjecture. However, Lin Xiao was still a little puzzled. Don't you accept papers in the field of mathematics? The other party smiled and said, of course we don't accept general mathematical papers, but your results are of epoch-making significance to the world, so we are willing to accept them. Clearly, the Goldbach conjecture had convinced Science to choose it. Hearing this, Lin Xiao's doubts were resolved. He had no particular preference for publication in any of the 4 major mathematics journals. Since Science had specifically invited him, he had no reason to refuse. Okay, I'll send you my paper after I've prepared it. Thank you for your support. The other party smiled at Lin Xiao's agreement and continued, in addition, we will organize a qualified review panel to conduct a final review of your paper. If it passes the final review, your work will be published immediately. Okay, Lin Xiao naturally had no doubts about this. Although the paper passed the academic presentation and no peer reviewers raised any issues, publication in a journal still requires going through the necessary procedures. After all, publication in a journal signifies the journal's approval of the work. If issues are subsequently identified, the journal's approval will be questioned. Therefore, it's reasonable for Science to arrange for a review panel to conduct a final review of Lin Xiao's paper. Of course, there's no need to worry. Having already passed the RZVN academic presentation process, the possibility of issues arising during the final review is minimized. Thank you to Hulin for your 30,000 Kidian coins, to fellow reader 2018040408184314 for your 18,000 Kidian coins, to Zenwangge Oceanshan for your 3,638 Kidian coins, to Cheo Jebaba for your 2,000 Kidian coins, and to Anadhin for your 1,800 Kidian coins. Many other readers also donated 100 Kidian coins. Thank you all for your support. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelis. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 143 News learned at the party. The impact of the proof of the Goldbach conjecture clearly hasn't completely ended. News spread throughout China and abroad, and the media outlets seeking to interview Lin Xiao could almost circle the entire length of Weiming Lake, a line equivalent to the volume of a single person. And naturally, Lin Xiao also made it onto the stage. The video footage from the Paris interview with Lin Xiao finally came in handy. In fact, after Lin Xiao's presentation today, he was interviewed again by the same female reporter named Wang who had previously interviewed him. So, these two interview videos, combined with the footage from today's academic presentation, comprise Lin Xiao's material for today. Lin Xiao, do you think the Goldbach conjecture is difficult? Of course it is. After all, a mathematician once said it's comparable to any other mathematical problem in the world. So, did you prove it successfully? If my thinking is correct, I should have. Everyone present couldn't help but laugh at this. You said it was a world-class problem, and then you claimed you'd proved it? Good grief, you're trying to undermine it before you praise it. Everyone around looked at the protagonist nearby, laughing and teasing. Lin Xiao, you're quite good at laying the groundwork. Is this what anticipation is? You're slandering me. You're slandering me. Lin Xiao, standing by, was at a loss for words. This interview clip was from the one in Paris. Back then, he hadn't given much thought to the questions, just answering whatever was asked. Now, it seemed the order of the questions was clearly intentional. Seeing Lin Xiao's reaction, the others also laughed. As for what they were doing here, it was actually a celebration party organized by Shengjing University and the Shengjing municipal government. After all, it was a proof of the Goldbach conjecture, so of course there had to be a party. However, this party was also intended for government officials, domestic universities, related companies, and the mathematicians to communicate. Look over there, representatives from many major domestic companies and schools had gone to talk with the mathematicians. This was the benefit of Lin Xiao holding this academic lecture in China. If they could retain a few renowned mathematicians, even if it was just a collaboration, it would still be beneficial. These companies and schools would then be indebted to Lin Xiao. Of course, Lin Xiao didn't care about these things. Just then, Professor Wiles approached. Wiles had received several invitations from Chinese companies, but he had declined them all. He held strong feelings for his hometown, which is why he chose to give up the Institute for Advanced Study in Princeton and return to his alma mater in England to teach. Naturally, he wasn't interested in these things. Lin Xiao, Wiles approached Lin Xiao and waved. Lin Xiao smiled and said, "Professor Wiles, how are you feeling in China?" "Not bad. China is worthy of its reputation as a country of etiquette. I feel very comfortable here," Wiles replied with a smile. Although he appeared normal, Lin Xiao noticed that he seemed less than cheerful. Lin Xiao couldn't help but ask, "Professor Wiles, what happened?" At Lin Xiao's question, Wiles' smile gradually grew forced. "Do you know Michael Atiyah?" Lin Xiao thought carefully, then nodded. Yes, he knew him because he claimed to have proved the Riemann hypothesis last year. Professor Atiyah hadn't succeeded, and his proof was surprisingly simple. But no one mocked him, and no one publicly commented on him, because he was considered one of the greatest mathematicians of the 20th century. His contributions to mathematics were undeniable, even if he didn't perform at the same level in his later years. Wiles asked, "Did you know it because of the Riemann hypothesis?" Lin Xiao hesitated, but nodded. Yes, Wiles sighed, and then said, "Sir Atiyah and I are old friends. When he was a professor at Oxford University, I attended his lectures. Later, I often chatted with him. However, probably because of the Riemann hypothesis, his health has been a little bad since October last year, until a month ago. He was hospitalized for treatment." Lin Xiao was stunned. Hospitalized? He was able to give academic reports and participate in various academic conferences a few months ago, but now he is hospitalized for treatment? Wiles nodded, then looked around and whispered to him, "Well, the doctor even said that he might not make it to January 13th because the functions of various parts of his body are gradually failing." The doctor judged that he had given up in his heart. Lin Xiao was immediately surprised. But suddenly he reacted. "January 13th? Sir Atiyah shouldn't be yet." At this point, Wiles smiled and said, "Yes, and we need to thank you for this, because after he heard that you might have proved the Goldbach conjecture, he wanted to know the final result, and his body functions miraculously recovered to a certain extent." Lin Xiao was stunned. Does this mean that he proved the Goldbach conjecture and made the mathematician regain hope of life? He asked, "So what's going on now?" He was very happy when he found out the result, but Wiles sighed again. His health had been failing for the past few days, and he lost consciousness 3 hours ago and was admitted to the intensive care unit again. He asked for your phone number 4 hours ago, wanting to talk, but you didn't answer, so he ended up recording a video and sending it to me, asking me to forward it to you. Lin Xiao couldn't help but pull out his phone and check it. Sure enough, there was a call from England. He'd muted it because he'd been getting so many calls today, and then, busy with other things, he'd barely checked his phone. He'd actually missed a call like this. He was silent for a moment, then said, "Sorry, it's okay. I know you're busy today. I've been there before." Wiles smiled. "I've sent a video to your email. If you have time when you get back, you can take a look." "Okay, well, I should get back to the hotel. I'm flying back to England tomorrow morning. I hope I can see him one last time." "Okay, goodbye." Lin Xiao nodded. Wiles patted Lin Xiao on the shoulder. "Well, goodbye, future Professor Lin. I'll look forward to hearing about you accomplishing another amazing feat next time." With that, the tall, Slender scholar departed. Lin Xiao watched Wiles depart, and thought again of the person he had no connection to, yet the life-sustaining relationship established through the Goldbach conjecture struck him as strange. Could proving a conjecture awaken another's desire for life? Lin Xiao suddenly felt that this miraculous yet seemingly logical relationship also embodied the wonder of life. Life, surely, plays a vital role in truth, he sighed. The existence of life and consciousness was truly filled with wonder. Just then, a voice called from the side. Perhaps you'll have to ask the people at the School of Life Sciences about this question. However, if you'd like to understand why materials composed of the same elements can exhibit such vastly different properties, I think I can offer some explanation. I believe this is also a kind of truth you seek. Chapter 144 Original Power. Lin Xiao was startled. Turning to look, he saw an elderly professor, who looked to be in his 50s or 60s, looking at him. Who are you? The professor smiled faintly and said, Chen Bao, from the School of Materials Science and Engineering at Peking University, and currently an academician. Hearing that it was an academician, Lin Xiao was somewhat surprised and said, Academician Chen, sorry, I didn't recognize you. Oh, it's okay. I actually wanted to see you because I hope you can join my research group. We need someone with strong mathematical skills to help us with our analysis. Chen Bao smiled and waved his hand, then explained his purpose for seeking Lin Xiao. Lin Xiao was taken aback. Materials science, does it require a lot of math? Although not as demanding as theoretical physics, we still need to perform mathematical analysis on various data. Chen Bao smiled faintly. Of course, it's all up to you. If you're willing, I'd certainly welcome it. Lin Xiao nodded, understanding what Chen Bao meant. He'd received many similar invitations before, asking him to join a research group and simply put a name on it. These invitations were essentially based on his potential and a desire to build a good relationship with him. With his name on the list, he could receive funding to pay his salary. If funding wasn't high, they could offer him a position as a third or fourth author. Lin Xiao naturally declined all of these. It was best not to owe favors. When it came to research, he sought projects where he could contribute, not necessarily benefits. However, Lin Xiao didn't rush to refuse academician Chen's invitation. Most of the previous invitees were professors, without any other titles, but this academician, Chen Bao, was the first to invite him. Furthermore, it was in the field of materials science. He pondered for a moment, then suddenly had an idea. He asked, "What's your research topic?" "Could I know? I can't tell you much, because the investors for our project are quite complex. But I can say it's about studying the high-temperature creep properties of metals." High-temperature creep? Lin Xiao pondered for a moment, quickly recalling a term he'd learned while studying the fundamentals of materials science. High-temperature creep in metals refers to the slow plastic deformation of metals under long-term conditions of constant temperature and load. It can be roughly understood as the deformation of metals caused by long-term external forces, similar to the physical changes in water wearing away stone. Creep becomes more pronounced at high temperatures. After all, metal atoms are already active at high temperatures, and if external forces are applied in a long, consistent direction, deformation is entirely possible. Therefore, if a metal's ability to prevent creep at high temperatures could be improved, it would clearly become an excellent high-temperature resistant material, and its applications would be even more extensive. Lin Xiao couldn't help but become intrigued. He wondered how materials research was conducted and whether it would be difficult. He also remembered his voucher, worth 30 truth points. The system had originally recommended that he use it for research that relied on luck, and this kind of materials research inevitably required some luck. In that case, he might as well take advantage of this opportunity to collaborate with the academician and learn more about materials science research. Then, he'd see how things progressed and consider using the voucher. "So," he said, "Academician Chen, thank you for your invitation. I'm quite interested in what you're talking about. How about we exchange contact information? After all, Chinese New Year is coming up soon. If I were to join, it might be after the New Year, and your project wouldn't be finished yet, right?" Hearing Lin Xiao's agreement, Chen Bao smiled. "That's a deal, then. The project definitely won't end that soon. Just let me know if you want to join." Then, Chen Bao and Lin Xiao exchanged contact information and chatted briefly before parting ways. The subsequent gathering ended quickly, and around 10 o'clock in the evening, Lin Xiao returned to Yanbi Garden. It was already late, so Lin Xiao planned to go straight to bed. But once in bed, he remembered the video that Sir Atai had asked Wiles to send him. He picked up his tablet and opened his email, where he saw the email from Wiles. After downloading the attachment, he opened the video and clicked play. Then, a very elderly, even haggard-looking man appeared on the screen. He was wearing hospital gowns, and the surroundings were clearly those of a hospital. However, with a relieved smile on his face, he said, "Young man, by the time you see this video, I may have truly retired. Not being able to talk to you may be my last regret, but no matter what, you have made my retirement regret-free. The cycle of life is no different. The old people leave, and the young people take over. Our mathematics community, which seems to be getting more and more confused, can always find opportunities to go further, and the fact that you solved the Goldbach conjecture before you were 20 years old shows me that there are successors to our mathematics community. The Riemann hypothesis is my regret. The proof failed last year, or I predicted that the proof would fail, but I am willing to do this kind of thing and take the risk. John Pokinghwell told me 9 years ago that I had nothing to lose and to think about what I wanted to do, so I have been moving in this direction. Anyway, I have already won all the honors I can get, so why worry? But no matter what, my final effort did not bring me success, so I know that the efforts of an old guy like me are meaningless, and you have given me hope. So, keep going, Lin from the East. The Goldbach conjecture has become a medal on your chest, but I believe you won't stop there. Try to solve more problems, like the Riemann hypothesis. It's another regret of mine, and a regret for many in the mathematical community. I hope you can solve it for us once again. My time is running out. So be it. May the force be with you. The video ended. Lin Xiao was silent for a moment. The dying wishes from a senior he had never met filled him with a sense of responsibility. Of course, he would continue to try to achieve those goals and solve them. Finally, he smiled. At least, it showed that even the senior valued him. May the system be with me. Please give me a monthly pass. Chapter 145, Reviews in Scientific Journals. Time passed quickly. The buzz surrounding the Goldbach conjecture, now, the Goldbach-Lin theorem, hadn't faded. Various media outlets seeking to interview Lin Xiao would occasionally call him, expressing their desire to speak to him. However, these calls gradually became less frequent. After a few days, things had mostly returned to normal. At most, he'd be recognized as the man who proved the Goldbach conjecture when he went shopping. He even once received a free drink from the small shop downstairs. Or, once, when he was hailing a taxi, the driver recognized him and offered to pay for it. Lin Xiao was left in a state of confusion, though he accepted these small gestures of enthusiasm. As for his paper, he had already sent it to Science, which had invited 5 top mathematicians, nearly all of them Fields medalists, to review it. They will likely conduct a final review, lasting between 2 weeks and a month, analyzing every step of Lin Xiao's paper before finalizing the results. Therefore, for the time being, there's no need to rush the paper's publication. Meanwhile, there's also some good news. Several Fields medalists have partnered with domestic institutions or companies. For example, Professor Laurent Lefort, who lectured at the Bourbaki seminar, has joined Warwick. 2 other Fields medalists have been invited to become distinguished professors at Shengjing University, while Qinghe University has also benefited. Several companies have also secured the services of these mathematicians. Lin Xiao is naturally pleased with this development. That's why he held a presentation in China. He paid no further attention to what happened next until the end of January, when he boarded a flight home. As for Mimi, he handed it over to Professor Zhang Ren upstairs, asking him to help raise her. Professor Zhang naturally accepted the offer, and to Lin Xiao's surprise, he discovered that Professor Zhang had also gotten a ragdoll cat. Upon inquiry, he discovered that after returning from Paris and taking Mimi back, Professor Zhang had gone out and bought a ragdoll cat. Lin Xiao was left in a state of confusion. Apparently, Professor Zhang was quite the charmer. Back home, Lin Xiao had little to do. As a college student, he didn't have any summer homework to worry about, so naturally, he had all the time to himself. Of course, for him, his time was still devoted to studying. Since he planned to join an academician's research group, he began to study material science books. Seeing their son sitting at his desk like this for an entire day, Lin Xiao's parents felt a mixture of pride and heartache. Lin Xiao's achievements were a source of pride. He had proved the Goldbach conjecture, becoming one of the most brilliant and renowned young prodigies in mathematics today. Naturally, his parents were delighted. Lin Xiao's accomplishments had even led to his father's advancement within his workplace, from associate section chief to full section chief. Meanwhile, his mother, previously a second-level teacher, had been promoted directly to first-level teacher. If compared to university titles, this would be the rank of intermediate lecturer, and the next step up would be associate professor. This was the benefit Lin Xiao's current position had brought to his family. But they also felt sorry for Lin Xiao's diligence. While other children were having fun, he devoted all his time to studying. They even urged him to go out more, but he refused. They were at a loss as to how to persuade him. And so, it was New Year's Eve. Though they felt bad, they still had to ask him to do something. Lin Xiao, go put up the couplets, Lin Guowen called to Lin Xiao, who was still reading in his room. Oh, Lin Xiao replied, then picked up the couplets and went to the door to put them up. His neighbor was also putting them up, and when he saw Lin Xiao come out, he chuckled, oh, our great mathematician is putting up couplets too. As he continued putting up the couplets, Lin Xiao said, my dad told me to, so I can't refuse, haha. The neighbor laughed, then said nothing more. After some work, only the Fu character on the door remained. Lin Xiao scratched his head. He'd heard that the Fu on the door should be put upside down, but it seemed like it was always put up right side up before. So he went inside and asked, Mom, should we put the Fu character upside down or upside down, right side up? Mom replied. Oh, with the instructions, Lin Xiao quickly finished putting up the couplets. Back inside, there were still a few more Fu characters to put on the room doors, so he spent some more time to finish them. But that wasn't all. His mother asked him to help pick vegetables. Several of his immediate family members were planning to come to their house for New Year's Eve dinner, so they had to prepare quite a few dishes. In the past, they'd each had their own family dinner, but this year's sudden announcement of a gathering was clearly due to a significant change in their family's circumstances. Lin Xiao's outstanding performance abroad had even earned him a spot as a lecturer at the Great Hall of the People. Furthermore, his family now had millions in savings, naturally raising their status among the relatives. So, the immediate family members suggested coming to their house for New Year's Eve dinner, a chance to reunite and, of course, bond. Of course, there wasn't any need to worry about the family having enough space for so many people. With their new house, it was quite spacious, so the dining table wouldn't be too small. A large turntable could easily seat a dozen people, and they didn't have many immediate family members. And so, by evening, more than a dozen relatives had arrived, and Lin Xiao even ran into the little cousin he'd met during last year's New Year's celebration. The younger cousin was much more polite now, even looking at him with admiration. He'd probably boasted to his classmates at school about things like my cousin proved the Goldbach conjecture and my cousin is the god of Lin. Thus, the New Year's Eve dinner was a joyful one, and Lin Xiao was often asked by relatives if he had a girlfriend. The following days, naturally, were filled with visits to family and friends, and the New Year slowly slipped by. On February 22nd, Lin Xiao returned to Shangjing. Although he hadn't attended classes much, he still remembered that he was a student, an undergraduate at that. So, he had to register. It was still a bit chilly in late February in Shangjing, and when he arrived at the registration point, he could see students still wearing down jackets. Naturally, he was no exception. After registering, he didn't care, he wouldn't be able to apply for classes that semester anyway. He then returned to Yanbai Park and picked up a package. It was a magazine, Science. He opened it, and the cover, like a blackboard, was dark green, with two formulas written on it: 2n equals p1 plus p2, 2n equals p1 plus p2. Just two simple equations, but they undoubtedly conveyed their meaning. An even number is equal to the sum of two prime numbers. Lin Xiao smiled slightly. The covers of scientific magazines were generally quite interesting. Then, he flipped through the table of contents and found his paper. He opened it and saw several comments. This young scholar possesses incredible mathematical inspiration, and his proof of the Goldbach conjecture undoubtedly confirms this. Jean-Pierre Serre. Seeing this name, Lin Xiao raised his eyebrows slightly. This man was also a veteran in the mathematician's world, born in 1926, and now in his 90s, the same generation as Grothendieck. His contributions to number theory were immense, so it was only fitting that he should comment on the Goldbach conjecture. Such an outstanding achievement, and from an 18-year-old, I believe the mathematical community need not worry about a future lack of talent. Xing Tunyua, Lin Xiao smiled slightly upon seeing the name. Although Yua's primary research was not number theory, Science magazine had invited him to comment, likely because this medal-winning mathematician shared the same country as him. After he proved the Goldbach conjecture, he had chatted with Yua. Just a few words with this mathematician, one of the most influential of our time, revealed his profound knowledge. Yua also held him in high regard, suggesting that if he wished to study abroad in the future, he could study under him at Harvard. As for promises, Yua made none. After all, there wasn't much to promise. With Lin Xiao's current achievements, which university wouldn't want to attend? Not to mention a full scholarship. Lin Xiao continued to look at the next comment. The third comment was from Science magazine's editor-in-chief, Thorpe. To be the editor-in-chief of Science was certainly no small feat, and his comment was quite interesting. Sometimes, I really wonder what strange thoughts these mathematicians have in their heads, especially when they're solving these difficult problems. Lin Xiao smiled at the comment. What was he thinking about? He was wondering what to eat this afternoon. Oh, by the way, I have to go pick up Mimi. Suddenly remembering Mimi, who was still at Professor Zheng's house, Lin Xiao put down the magazine and called Professor Zheng. The call went through quickly. Professor Zheng, I'm back at Yanbi Garden. Is it convenient for me to come over now? Oh, Xiaolin, come on, I'm home, sure. After hanging up, Lin Xiao went upstairs and knocked on the door. It opened quickly. Seeing Professor Zheng standing at the door, Lin Xiao smiled and said, Professor Zheng, sorry to bother you. Come in. It's nothing to bother you. I'd love for you to come over more often. Zheng Ren smiled, then opened the door and let Lin Xiao in. Chapter 146 Shanghai Institute of Aeronautical Materials. Entering Professor Zheng's house, Lin Xiao saw an elderly woman sitting on the sofa. He greeted her, Professor Sun, Xiao Lin. The elderly woman nodded graciously, then stood up and poured Lin Xiao some water. This Professor Sun was Sun Ling, Professor Zheng's wife and a professor at the Guangzhou School of Management. This elderly couple was considered a highly intelligent couple, and quite well known within the school. Soon, Sun Ling poured Lin Xiao a cup of tea and said with a smile, Come and have some tea. Thank you. Lin Xiao took the tea and took a sip. Zheng Ren, standing next to him, smiled and asked, How was your New Year's Eve? It was okay. It was just like that anyway. No firecrackers allowed, and it wasn't that festive, Lin Xiao said, spreading his hands. Zheng Ren smiled. That's true. Did Zhang Ronger go to school? Lin Xiao asked, noticing that Zhang Ronger was also gone. Oh, she's studying inside now because school starts next week. Mimi and Bubu are in her room too. Why don't you go check it out? Zheng Ren pointed to Zhang Ronger's room. Lin Xiao nodded and stood up to go over. He hadn't seen Mimi in nearly a month, and he wondered if the little thing had forgotten him. Arriving at Zhang Ronger's door, he knocked. Zhang Ronger, I'm here to see Mimi, Brother Lin. Zhang Ronger's voice echoed from inside, followed by the sound of footsteps, and the door opened. However, it was a stranger who opened the door. Lin Xiao was startled. Had Zhang Ronger changed so much in just a month? The girl, upon seeing Lin Xiao, also had a puzzled expression on her face, staring at him for several seconds, as if trying to confirm something. But just then, Zhang Ronger finally appeared behind him, looking at Lin Xiao with surprise. Brother Lin. You're back. This was Zhang Ronger. Lin Xiao smiled at her and said, Yeah, I just got back today. Yeah, Zhang Ronger nodded, then remembered she hadn't introduced the girl in front of her, so she said, Oh, by the way, this is Sister Su Kexen, here to tutor me in English. Lin Xiao finally understood why the girl was there and nodded to her. Hello. At this moment, surprise finally showed on her face. Hello. Are you Lin Shen? Lin Xiao smiled. No, I'm Lin Xiao. Su Kexen was stunned, then an awkward smile appeared on her face. Ah. Sorry, I saw that's what people call you online. Everyone on the internet was calling Lin Xiao Lin Shen, and she almost forgot what Lin Xiao's real name was. Lin Xiao waved his hand. It's okay. Then he looked at Zhang Ronger and said, Where's Mimi? On my bed. Zhang Ronger pointed to her own bed, then opened the door and let Lin Xiao in. Lin Xiao walked in and saw two cats lying on a pink bed. One of them was Mimi, and the other was Professor Zheng's cat, Bubu. Lin Xiao immediately recognized which one was his, walked over, and scooped it up like a professional cat. Mimi, did you miss me? Mimi glanced up at him, then meowed, pressing her 2 pink paw pads against his chest. Looks like you haven't forgotten me yet. Seeing this, Lin Xiao smiled. This was the cat's kneeling gesture, meaning the cat is enjoying themselves, especially when kneading on a person, indicating that the cat feels comfortable around that person. Zhang Ranger, observing this, was immediately envious. Wow, Mimi hasn't even kneaded on me. Su Kexin, who was standing next to him, observed Lin Xiao's expression. Having never expected this super scholar to be a cat lover in private, she whispered to Zhang Ranger, "Ranger, are you and Lin Xiao related?" Zhang Ranger stared at the cat and replied, "No, brother Lin lives downstairs." Su Kexin was stunned. He lives downstairs? Should he be in the school dormitory? No, it seems your school put him here because brother Lin is so talented, Zhang Ranger replied. Su Kexin was astonished. Is this how top students are treated? Dormitories are always arranged in places like this. Then, after Lin Xiao held Mimi in his arms, he smiled and said to Zhang Ranger, "Then you should continue studying. Study hard and become your grandparent's student in the future." Yes, Zhang Ranger nodded. As a student at Shangjing No. 101 Middle School, she had excellent grades, but whether she could get into Beijing University would require hard work. Lin Xiao left the room and walked out, carrying Mimi. Before leaving, he stroked the nearby rag. Well, since he was here, of course he had to rub it. His goal accomplished, he chatted with Professor Zhang and the others for a few minutes, thanked them for their help raising the cat, and then returned to his apartment downstairs. Lin Xiao continued to read materials books, but he also made sure to contact Academician Chen Bao. "Academician Chen, I'm back in Shanghai. When can I visit your group?" A short while later, the other party replied, "Tomorrow at 2 p.m., Shanghai Institute of Aeronautical Materials, Laboratory 4. Just mention my name and you'll be there." Okay, Lin Xiao had no problem going to the Institute of Aeronautical Materials instead of Shanghai University. He had also researched Chen Bao over the past few days. Academician Chen was no ordinary person. He wasn't just a professor at Shanghai University, where he worked part-time. He primarily worked as a researcher at the China Airlines Shanghai Institute of Aeronautical Materials. He was a leading figure in the domestic materials industry, having made significant contributions to national defense science and technology. His research focused primarily on aerospace materials, particularly high-temperature, high-toughness materials. Many of his findings have been incorporated into the development of fighter jets, transport aircraft, and drones. From this, Lin Xiao had a rough idea of who was funding the project. It was most likely related to the Aviation Industry Corporation of China, a military-industrial complex. It was no wonder Academician Chen had said the investor was complex and couldn't reveal too much. At this moment, Lin Xiao also developed a keen interest in tomorrow's materials research. He had long excelled in mathematics, but this was his first foray into experimental science. As for his previous project on the Navier-Stokes equations with Academician Tang Qing, it had been completed a few days before the Lantern Festival. He was at home at the time, so he didn't participate in the celebrations. However, his contributions had certainly paid off, with a paper published as a second author in the top applied mathematics journal CPAM. According to Academician Tang Qing, this achievement would likely qualify him for a National Natural Science Award. Of course, Lin Xiao didn't care about the awards. Winning them was fine, and not winning wouldn't matter. Academician Tang Qing could pursue them himself, and Lin Xiao didn't need to worry about it. And so, the next day arrived. At 1:40 p.m., Lin Xiao appeared at the entrance of the Shangjing Institute of Aeronautical Materials. Located within the Hongguankan Science Park, it wasn't far from Shangjing University, and naturally, Yanbai Park. Upon reaching the entrance, the guard stopped him. "What are you doing here?" "I'm here to participate in Academician Chen Bao's research, going to Laboratory 4, Lin Xiao said, glancing at the guard. As expected of a security guard here, he looked like a soldier. The guard took a closer look and asked in surprise, "Are you the Lin Xiao who proved the mathematical conjecture?" Lin Xiao was stunned, and couldn't help but sigh at the fame of the Goldbach conjecture. It was truly known to everyone. Then he smiled and nodded. "It's me. Academician Chen mentioned you were coming." The guard nodded immediately, then pointed to a nearby registration book and said, "Sign in there. After you go in, go that way, into that building. Laboratory number 4 is on the first floor." "Thank you." Lin Xiao walked over and signed his name. "That way, right." Yes, that building. Thank you very much. The guard watched Lin Xiao walk away and suddenly asked again, by the way, can I ask you how it felt to solve that math problem? Hearing the guard's question, Lin Xiao smiled and said, it felt great. After answering, the guard nodded thoughtfully and gave him a thumbs up. Lin Xiao waved and turned to walk away. Following the guard's instructions, he found laboratory number 4. Although it was called Research Room 4, it was actually composed of several related labs. Just then, a man happened to pass by in the hallway. Seeing him, his eyes lit up and he asked, excuse me, are you Lin Xiao? Yes, finally, I meet the real boss. The man laughed heartily. I'm Wang Horan, a doctoral student of academician Chen. Our boss told us you'd be here today, and we were all surprised. Come on, I'll take you to see the boss. Lin Xiao nodded. Thank you very much. For graduate students, since their advisors pay their salaries after securing project funding, their advisors are essentially their bosses. Lin Xiao was also aware of this. Soon, led by Wang Horan, they entered a laboratory. How's the TA-32 group going? Entering the lab, Lin Xiao saw researchers in white coats, each going about their duties. The person who asked this question was none other than academician Chen Bao, whom Lin Xiao had met. No, it's all cracked, answered the young man, presumably another graduate student. No, Chen Bao frowned. What are the EDS and SEM analysis results? The medallographic structure after creep has changed from before creep. The original Woodmanstetten structure of lamellar Greek letter alpha plus grain boundary Greek letter alpha plus intergranular Greek letter beta is now basically invisible. The grain boundary Greek letter alpha has disappeared, and the lamellar Greek letter alpha has become significantly wider. Chen Bao shook his head. That's it for now. He then looked at Lin Xiao, a smile on his face. Lin Xiao, you're here. Lin Xiao was looking at the image displayed on the computer. After hearing Chen Bao's words, he nodded and said, Academician Chen, well, let's not talk about anything else. Since this is your first time here, just familiarize yourself with our research. If you have any questions, just ask Horan. Horan, take good care of Lin Xiao. I'll definitely take good care of Mr. Lin. Wang Horan gave him an okay sign. Thank you very much. Lin Xiao had no objection to this arrangement and nodded to Wang Horan. By the way, do I not have to wear your white coat? Lin Xiao pointed at Wang Horan's clothes and asked. Hey, if you want to wear it, I'll take you to get it. You don't have to wear it, then I'll wear it. Lin Xiao was eager to try it out. He was always curious about new things. Seeing him like this, Wang Horan smiled. Okay, come with me. Soon, Lin Xiao received a white coat. After putting it on, he immediately felt like a laboratory expert. Finally, I feel like I'm getting it, he nodded with satisfaction, and then Lin Xiao said, let's go to the lab, only 2 chapters today. The main plot is over, and I'm stuck. Also, I've started revising my paper. Once I'm done, I'll be back to full form. Chapter 147 Computational Materials Science. Lin Xiao and Wang Horan returned to the lab and began observing. They were testing a new type of TA-32 titanium, and then testing its creep resistance. Wang Horan, who was also busy, explained it to Lin Xiao. You know TA-32 titanium, right? Lin Xiao nodded. Yes, that's good. Wang Horan nodded, then pointed at the various items in the lab. Look, that's our stretching machine. That's our scanning electron microscope, a Quantum 650, and an Olympus medallographic microscope. The furnace and the other things are next door. That's the casting lab. Oh, by the way, have you ever experienced an experiment before? I don't think math students have such classes. No. Lin Xiao looked at the seemingly advanced equipment and shook his head. He thought for a moment and said, I think I went to lab in high school, but I've forgotten everything. Haha, that's fine. I'll give you a try later if I have time. Wang Horan smiled and said, have you ever read any books on materials science before? Yes, I have. I read 5 books on the subject before coming here, Lin Xiao replied. In one vacation, he read 5 books on materials science, which gave him 25 points of experience in materials science. That's fine. The boss said you came here to help us analyze the data. I'll find the data from the previous experiments for you later, and then you can try it. But the requirements are not particularly high anyway. Our materials research, structure and performance, does not require much mathematics. The high mathematics requirements are in the calculation and simulation. To be honest, I think this is simply overkill, Wang Haoran said with a laugh. You are a big shot in the mathematics world, so don't take these things too lightly. Don't talk nonsense, kid. At this time, probably after hearing Wang Haoran's words, Chen Bao said, we don't need simulation calculations now, that's now. If we need to use it later, we will definitely have to use it. Then you will have to see how Lin Xiao shows you. What do you young people call it? It should be a show of operation, what? Boss, we still have to use calculations and simulations later. After hearing what academician Chen said, the other graduate students immediately asked. It depends. You'll need to do some finite element analysis, after all, Chen Bao said with a smile. He then looked at Lin Xiao and said, we'll be waiting for you to show your skills then. Lin Xiao quickly waved his hand, saying, this is my first time doing this either. Don't put all your hopes on me, haha, I trust you. Chen Bao waved his hand and then said to the others, that's why I'm asking you to learn a little bit about computational materials science. It's a promising field. If you can make some breakthroughs, you can graduate from my program. Yes, 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 next time for sure, the students responded one after another. You guys, seeing the students' completely perfunctory attitude, Chen Bao didn't bother to intervene. Although he was optimistic about computational materials science, it currently played a supporting role in materials research, even supplementing experimental work. So there was nothing to say if these students weren't keen on pursuing this field. Lin Xiao, standing nearby, paused in thought after hearing this. He'd previously read a book on computational materials science, a discipline that requires both mathematical skills and computer science. The general process involves using experimental data to build a mathematical model, which is then simulated by a computer. Through repeated simulations, the model is refined, and based on this refined model, the process is designed to produce the material. Another approach involves directly performing simulations based on specific materials or reaction mechanisms. Once the model is generated, the material is then directly prepared through experimentation to achieve the desired result. This is a form of predictive research. Obviously, if computational materials science were truly that advanced, it wouldn't be a secondary endeavor. Currently, computational materials science can only provide approximate estimates, but these approximations are only for show. Sometimes, due to unknown factors, the calculated results differ significantly from the final results. This is due to the lack of a truly predictive computational materials science theory, and existing theories can only produce approximate results. Lin Xiao does have some interest in this field, but for now, he's better off focusing on the task at hand. The experiment continued. Metal research is inherently a long process, and expecting results quickly is practically impossible. This is why some metal materials researchers sometimes can't help but complain that others produce a top-tier, first-tier paper every 6 months, while they produce a mediocre, second-tier paper every year. Lin Xiao watched from the sidelines, occasionally observing them heating the titanium alloy to 600 degrees Celsius, for example, and then testing its creep properties using the tensile tester. There are only a few ways to improve creep resistance: enhancing the material's inherent heat resistance or adding a high-temperature coating to the material for insulation. They were currently attempting to enhance the material's inherent properties and thus improve creep resistance. After observing for about 2 hours, Lin Xiao finally had his task, analyzing the data. Just analyze the average creep limit of the material we're testing today. There are generally 2 types of creep limits. Do you know? Wang Haoran asked briefly, worried that Lin Xiao wouldn't know where to begin with this new analysis. Well, there's the creep limit at a specified creep elongation, and the creep limit at a specified steady-state creep rate. Lin Xiao's memory was quite good. The second stage of creep in titanium alloys is more obvious and easier to observe, so the second method of expressing the creep limit should be used. Right, as expected of Master Lin. Hearing Lin Xiao's accurate explanation, Wang Haoran gave him a thumbs up and said, then analyze it. We have 2 more sets of experiments later. I'll bring you the data when it's ready. Oh, okay. Lin Xiao nodded, took the data, and began to calculate. Although the materials science terminology they had just used during their experiment was impressive, the mathematical calculations were his domain. As if entering a comfort zone, Lin Xiao quickly calculated the results. There were still 2 more sets of experiments to go, but the experiment wasn't over yet. They were testing this new Ta32 titanium alloy, testing its performance after 2 hours of continuous tension at the same force. One set of experiments would take 2 hours. After that, there were 10 or even more hours of testing. If the material didn't meet the project's objectives, they'd have to start over and conduct new experiments. This is why their metal materials research cycle is so long. And so, it was time for lunch. Let's go, everyone, let's go eat. Chen Bao checked the time. It was past 6, so he called out. He also smiled at Lin Xiao, saying, Lin Xiao, let's go. I'll show you our cafeteria. Lin Xiao nodded and followed. On the second floor of the cafeteria, Chen Bao ordered a sumptuous dinner and invited them to eat together. As an academician and a materials scientist, Chen Bao had plenty of funding, so eating wasn't a problem. How was your experiment today? While they ate, Chen Bao didn't forget to ask Lin Xiao. Lin Xiao smiled and said, not bad. It was quite interesting. How does it compare to mathematical research? Well, each has its merits, Lin Xiao replied. Actually, mathematics held a higher place in his heart. Perhaps that was true for all mathematicians. I remember watching an interview with a mathematician. The reporter asked which was more important to him, math or his wife. The mathematician then said that his answer might be a bit disrespectful to his wife, but math was still more important. Hearing Lin Xiao's obviously hesitant answer, Chen Bao smiled and guessed the answer in Lin Xiao's mind. Sure enough, you mathematicians are a little different. Those of us who work in materials science have a lot of people discussing how to change careers, but you guys are different. You study math for a while, and then you'll be dealing with math for the rest of your lives. Lin Xiao thought about it and it seemed to be true. Although there were few people who could study pure mathematics, there were still many career options in applied mathematics. After all, you couldn't just finish studying mathematics and then come over to write novels. However, speaking of this, Lin Xiao suddenly asked, by the way, academician Chen, are you optimistic about computational materials science? Of course I am. Materials research is incredibly expensive. Raw materials, equipment, space, and so on, it costs an untold amount. If simulation can significantly reduce these costs, just imagine how broad its future market prospects will be. Perhaps even a predictive theory will become a state secret. Chen Bao smiled and said, some people say that if we could have a supercomputer that could calculate the Hamiltonian for every particle in a piece of material, we could really build anything we want. Lin Xiao laughed too. Using a supercomputer to calculate every Hamiltonian? Audacious. It's something that could only be achieved in science fiction. If I want to learn something about this, what do you think I should learn? You want to study this? Chen Bao was stunned, then smiled and said, of course I support you. Our computational materials science needs a math expert like you to help achieve a breakthrough. Lin Xiao didn't know whether to laugh or cry. This kind of thing can't be done just by being good at math. Haha, but being good at math is definitely the first requirement, Chen Bao said. If you are determined to develop in this field, first you have to learn some computer-related things, such as Linux and Python. Then you have to be able to use professional software for computational materials science, such as VASP and Phonopy. There are also other professional content, such as quantum chemistry, molecular dynamics, statistical mechanics, etc. So, I'll ask other friends for you later, and you can just follow my instructions when the time comes. Thank you very much. Chapter 148 The Correct Use of Truth Points. That was how Lin Xiao's first day in the lab passed. After he returned home, Chen Bao sent him various materials on computational materials science. There was a lot to cover, but he just needed to take his time. For Lin Xiao, whose brain development had now reached 4.35%, his reading speed had improved significantly, especially his memory. A book that once took him 10 days to read could now be finished in 6 or 7. There were also some computer programming courses, so he naturally experimented with programming himself, and now he was more or less an entry-level programmer. And so, a month passed. On this day, Lin Xiao was simulating a material using specialized computational materials software, while also tentatively building a mathematical model to analyze its properties. This was a new type of GDL4 steel, which he had simulated using first principles density functional theory using the Ks equation. That impressive-sounding theory is a commonly used method in computational materials science. Modern computational materials science tools are largely based on first principles and density functional theory. While there are other common theoretical tools, Lin Xiao is currently using this method. Of course, the GDL4 steel he created through this method was merely a simulation. To truly manufacture it, He would need to hire someone specialized in experimental design to design the process and transform it from a computer simulation into physical reality. GDL4 steel, with its high strength and low cost, has the potential to replace expensive M2 steel. However, its poor machinability hinders its ability to be processed, hindering large-scale production. Therefore, his design was primarily motivated by the goal of improving this new steel's machinability. While his simulations were intended to demonstrate this performance, testing their effectiveness required designing a production process, manufacturing the steel, and conducting relevant experiments. However, given his experimental experience, designing such a process was clearly impossible. This requires practical experience, not just a highly developed brain. This is why computational materials science has become a vessel of experimentation. It's like creating a PowerPoint presentation for a project. To truly implement the ideas in the presentation, you have to seek investment from wealthy individuals, naturally becoming a vessel of the wealthy. Unless you're a big shot, skilled not only at calculations but also experimental design. However, Lin Xiao suddenly remembered his truth points and the 30-point voucher. System, answer my question, is this model successful? How many truth points will it cost? System, this answer requires 1 truth point. If you use an answer worth 30 truth points, the item will disappear after use. Lin Xiao pondered. It seemed that if he was going to use the voucher, 30 truth points would be the best. He pondered for a moment, then a light bulb went off. He asked, how can I modify my model to achieve my desired goal? How many truth points will this question cost? System, this answer requires 10 truth points. Lin Xiao was immediately shocked. 10 truth points. So, with 10 truth points, he could create a new type of steel with mechanical properties comparable to M2 steel, while also having a significantly lower production cost? Any new material has the potential to have excellent economic value. Once this new GDL4 steel, which overcomes its poor cutting performance, becomes available, it clearly has the potential to replace M2 steel. For example, it could replace M2 steel in air conditioner compressor vanes. Vanes are a core component of air conditioner compressors, which in turn are the core components of the air conditioner's outdoor unit. This means that every air conditioner, or even every compressor, produced requires an M2 steel vane. While the value of such a vane might not be high, perhaps only a few yuan or even a few cents, the volume must be considered. The 200 million air conditioners produced annually in China alone demonstrate a vast market potential. It's a market worth at least several hundred million yuan. Now, if this GDL4 steel could be produced, avoiding its poor cutting performance, and then mass-produced, it would obviously be possible to capture the market previously occupied by M2 steel at a much lower price. The profit margin would then be even higher than that of M2 steel. Lin Xiao's heart suddenly began to pound at the thought. Would that mean he could make a killing? Of course, he didn't just impulsively spend all those truth points to create the product. After all, he would be broke and powerless after the product was created. He would also need to hire people for testing and preparation, and would inevitably have to share the profits, and then there would be other things to deal with. The thought of this extinguished a passion in Lin Xiao's heart, as if a bucket of cold water had been poured on him. So nothing is that simple. He shook his head, and gave up. He'd have to wait for another opportunity. Regardless, he had found a good way to make money, or rather, a way to monetize his truth points. And who knew, perhaps 10 truth points could be used on other, even more profitable materials. And it wasn't just on this steel. With that thought, those truth points suddenly transformed into red 100 yuan bills. Great stuff. This was the proper way to use truth points. Since they were all pursuing truth, could they be hindered by economic issues? Obviously not. Comparing the mathematical problems he'd solved with these materials, if one quantified their value, not in terms of economic value, but in terms of the truth they contained, then it was clear that the mathematical problems he'd solved were incredibly valuable. For example, his solution to the Goldbach conjecture was worth 30 truth points, several times the value of the new GDL4 steel, which had an economic value of hundreds of millions. Lin Xiao couldn't help but imagine how much money he'd make if he cashed in all his truth points. He'd become a CEO, marry a wealthy and beautiful woman. I suppose he'd build a private underground research institute, then a particle collider, and finally his own supercomputing center. Just as Lin Xiao was daydreaming, he suddenly received a message. It was from Wang Haoran. Master Lin, the materials we prepared a while ago have temporarily met our first stage expectations. The boss has decided to run simulations on the computer. Would you be able to come over now so we can have a team meeting? Hearing the notification, Lin Xiao came back to his senses. After a quick glance, he replied, "No problem, I'll be right there." He then packed up and prepared to leave. Before leaving, he took one last look at the GDL4 steel he had simulated and curled his lips. The system said 10 truth points were required. So it looked like his design wouldn't meet expectations at all. Who knows what a piece of crap it would be when it's finally produced. No wonder computational materials science is so underappreciated these days. Of course, perhaps it had something to do with him only having studied for a month. With more experience, perhaps he'd have a chance to succeed. He then left his concerns and headed to the Aeronautical Materials Research Institute. According to our analysis, the new titanium alloy we tested last time exhibited even better properties than we anticipated. At 600 degrees Celsius, 400 MPa, and a half hour, the creep residual elongation was less than 0.35%, and at 750 degrees Celsius, 200 MPa, and a half hour, the creep residual elongation was less than 2.5%. In a small conference room in Laboratory 4, the research team led by academician Chen Bao was beginning their meeting. To further explore the properties of this material, I will use simulations to refine the ratios of its various elements. As Chen Bao finished speaking, the other graduate students turned their attention to Lin Xiao. They all knew that Lin Xiao was currently researching computational materials science, so this task would likely fall on Lin Xiao's shoulders. Of course, there was also Chen Bao. As an academician in materials science, Chen Bao certainly had some experience with computational materials science and had frequently used computational methods to aid his previous projects. As for the graduate students, their only responsibility would be to design the manufacturing process after the mathematical model was established, or perhaps to assist with the design. They hadn't learned much about computational materials science, and at best, they'd only been able to use the software. Academician Chen looked at Lin Xiao and said with a smile, "So, next, Lin Xiao, we'll have our hands full." Lin Xiao smiled and said, "I'll give it a try. After all, I've only been learning for a month, that's okay. Experience is always better than no experience. We'll just take it slow. If you have any questions, just ask me." Chen Bao waved his hand and said, "Then everyone, get ready. Spend the next few days researching the relevant information, and then we'll get started." "Okay," everyone responded in unison. "If we succeed, this could potentially be used in our missiles or fighter jet engines. So, everyone, get it right." "Okay, got it, yes." Chen Bao said no more. Once this high-temperature resistant titanium alloy is developed and achieves their desired goals, it will undoubtedly find military application. However, if it fails to achieve the desired results, all their time will be wasted. Of course, this also depends on luck. The future remains to be determined by the results. However, Lin Xiao, standing next to him, had a thought. If it could be used for national defense, he would be happy to use the 30 truth point voucher for that purpose. 2 more chapters today. Chapter 149 Free System? Computational simulations for the new material quickly began. A few days later, Lin Xiao returned to the Institute of Aeronautical Materials, but not to Laboratory 4, where he had been before, but to the Institute's Materials Data Center. Here, the computers boasted greater computing power and were more secure, preventing the possibility of outside surveillance. The country across the Pacific Ocean constantly monitored China's internet, especially for research related to defense technology. Even research needed professional assistance to prevent their research from being discovered abroad, potentially leading to the leakage of their research and potentially even the deduction and replication of their findings. In short, this type of research demanded thorough security precautions. Alright, without further ado, Lin Xiao, let's get started on building the model, Chen Bao said to Lin Xiao, sitting in front of the computer. Okay, Lin Xiao gave an okay sign. Well, Xiao Wang, bring the data over, Chen Bao called over. Wang Haoran responded and then handed their data to Lin Xiao and Chen Bao. Lin Xiao and Chen Bao had already opened the relevant software and began using it. To perform simulations based on existing materials, they first needed to understand the various structures of their material. Our Greek letter gamma-Schial alloy primarily has 2 structures, L10 and B2. Lin Xiao, You'll start with the L10 structure, and I'll build the B2 structure, okay, Lin Xiao replied. He glanced at the data nearby. L10 lattice structure, lattice constants A equals B equals 3.984, C equals 4.065A, space group page 4/M, tetragonal system. Enter the relevant data, then establish an atomic coordinate system. Then, replace some of the atoms, primarily with other metallic elements. The software then approximates whether the properties meet their requirements based on the properties of these atoms. Lin Xiao toiled away, with several graduate students standing behind him, watching him show off. Of course, this was just entering data, it wasn't much of a show. The real show of skill lay below. Using the software, he employed a first principles pseudopotential plane wave method, selecting standard pseudopotentials for different metal elements to describe the interaction between the ionic core and the valence electrons. As Lin Xiao input more and more data, the others behind him grew increasingly bewildered. They had never learned how to use this tool, so of course they were confused. But now, they couldn't help but marvel. Lin Xiao had only been studying for a month, and he was already so impressive. What kind of learning efficiency was that? It was outrageous. It put these ordinary graduate students, who had graduated from universities like Peking University, Tsinghua University, or the University of Science and Technology of China and then enrolled here for graduate studies, to shame. However, they soon calmed down. After all, this was computational materials science. While it sounded impressive and sometimes required supercomputers for assistance, it didn't guarantee anything would be achieved. They simply had to conduct their own experiments. This was something Lin Xiao couldn't compete with. Moreover, once the simulation results were out, they would be the ones designing the process, and Lin Xiao would be watching them perform. So, they stopped trying to compete with Lin Xiao and watched quietly. Time flew by. While computers were convenient, using them wasn't easy, requiring considerable time. Even when it was time for lunch, Lin Xiao and Chen Bao would remain at their posts, with the other graduate students bringing them lunch from the cafeteria. They brought boxed lunches, one containing rice and another containing a mix of shredded potatoes, vegetables, and twice-cooked pork. Lin Xiao wasn't picky about his food. Aside from bitter melon, he wasn't particularly picky. He quickly finished his meal and then returned to his computer, working on various simulations. From 9 in the morning, they worked until 9 at night. Lin Xiao was young, though, and it was fine. But Chen Bao, a man in his 50s or 60s, remained so dedicated, a fact he secretly admired. This was perhaps the true face of a scientist, dedicating his entire life to research. Especially one like Chen Bao, who had made such significant contributions to national defense science and technology. While for people like them, this was merely a hobby, something they happily pursued, those who quietly enjoyed the peace they brought should also express their gratitude. Until 9:30 p.m. Okay, let's stop here for today, Lin Xiao. How are you feeling? You seem quite familiar with this. Chen Bao stopped operating the mouse, stood up, stretched, and then asked Lin Xiao with a smile. Lin Xiao gave him an okay sign and said, "Not bad. I tried it myself a while ago and made some modifications to the GDL4 steel." "Oh? How did it turn out? Do you want Xiao Wang and the others to help you make a prototype?" Lin Xiao quickly waved his hands, saying with a puzzled look, No, I just gave it a try. Who knows? It might turn out to be a piece of crap, haha, maybe it will work." Chen Bao waved his hands. Our business was called alchemy in ancient times. Luck is something you never know. Okay, that's enough for today. We'll continue tomorrow. Tomorrow, and the day after tomorrow. Another 10 days passed, and Lin Xiao and Chen Bao, patching and tinkering, modified the unit cell structure no fewer than 8 times. Sometimes their model would crash in their software, meaning one of their models was deemed unsuccessful. However, by the 9th attempt, they had finally succeeded in creating a material model that met physical requirements. Simulations suggested that the creep resistance of this material could be improved by approximately 20%. The next step was to design the production process based on this model. This wouldn't involve Lin Xiao, unless he used truth points directly. However, since Chen Bao and his team could directly design the production process, there was no need to spend truth points. Time passed quickly, from March to April. Another day, in the casting lab of Research Room 4. It's out of the furnace, Wang Haoran shouted, and they quickly ran to the electric arc furnace, pouring the molten titanium alloy from it into the adjacent consumable shell furnace for casting. This furnace effectively prevented contamination of the active metal from the crucible. After cooling, a titanium alloy rod finally appeared before them. Next, they returned to the materials testing lab next door to test its creep properties. However, the results were disappointing. This new material, which had taken them another 2 weeks to develop, had a significant gap between its actual creep resistance and the creep resistance they had previously simulated and calculated. While it was stronger than the original material, it was only slightly stronger. This slight improvement, not even 1%, was clearly not satisfactory. Let's keep refining it. Let's try adding some other elements, Chen Bao said with regret, but quickly recovered. With luck, they might have achieved their goal on the first try, but their luck was clearly not so great. Of course, even a slight improvement was better than no improvement at all. So, they returned to the computer room to continue their simulations. Lin Xiao, looking at the mathematical model displayed on the computer, felt a sense of dilemma. What should he do next? Suddenly, he remembered the system. Could he use the system's quote for truth points to verify whether his research was on the right track? Then, could he get something for free? At this thought, his eyes lit up. It seemed feasible. So he immediately asked, "System, if we replace aluminum atoms with molybdenum atoms, can we improve creep resistance by 50%? How many truth points are needed for this?" The system replied, "That requires 13 truth points." Lin Xiao then asked, "What if we replace titanium atoms with zirconium atoms? That requires 13 truth points." Same. Hearing this answer, Lin Xiao frowned. Within a single unit cell, replacing aluminum atoms with molybdenum atoms and titanium atoms with zirconium atoms should result in a significant difference. How could the truth points be the same? He pondered carefully, using his 4.35% brain, and suddenly came up with a possible solution. He asked again, "How can we improve creep resistance by 50%? That requires 13 truth points." The system's voice echoed as usual. Now, Lin Xiao couldn't help but have a guess. The system didn't consider the distance from the destination, it only considered the absolute distance between the destination and the current stage. That absolute distance was the final price it offered. Just like if he walked north from the Institute of Aeronautical Materials, he could reach Peking University in a few kilometers. But if he walked south, he would have to circle the Earth, and the distance between his starting point and destination would still be the same. Therefore, the idea of judging the success of a research direction based on the system's price quote is basically a failure. Unless one spends some time researching it, then confirming whether the system's price quote decreases by the time it's available is a good way to determine if it's the right direction. Even then, it's still possible to get something for free, at least it allows for quick confirmation and avoids dead ends. However, it's possible that after further research, one will already know whether the direction is correct, eliminating the need for further questioning. Shaking his head, Lin Xiao gave up the idea of using the system for free. However, if improving the creep resistance of their shell alloy by 50% requires 13 truth points, how much would a 100% increase cost? He immediately asked himself this question. This problem requires 29 truth points, 29 truth points. Lin Xiao was shocked. So expensive. But he thought for a moment and asked, if its strength, oxidation resistance, volume stability, and high-temperature structural stability are all improved to a certain extent, how much will it cost? This problem requires 44.2 truth points, only an increase of 15.2 truth points? Lin Xiao thought about it carefully. It was probably because there would be overlaps in achieving these requirements. For example, if the creep performance is improved, the high-temperature structural stability will also be improved. However, this 44.2 truth points doesn't seem unacceptable to him. He suddenly asked Chen Bao next to him, "Academician Chen, what if we can improve the creep resistance of this thing by 100%? 100%? Good boy, I think an improvement of 30% is good. Then it will definitely be a candidate material for our future WS-15 engine siding. With a 100% improvement, are you going to build it directly on the fan blades?" Chapter 158 Chance Encounter at the Weiming Lake. Chen Bao couldn't help but laugh at Lin Xiao's question. The materials he was researching for this project were intended for use in engine panels, specifically fighter jet engines. Fighter engines typically have a low bypass ratio, Unlike the high bypass ratio engines used in civil aviation, high bypass ratio engines don't require the same high temperature resistance as low bypass ratio engines. In fighter jets, the service temperature of engine panels is generally around 600 degrees Celsius, sometimes even higher. The primary stresses they endure come from mechanical loads and high-frequency vibration. Fan blades, on the other hand, operate at temperatures exceeding 1000 degrees Celsius, making them the hottest part of the entire engine. Furthermore, their high rotational speeds create even more complex stresses, highlighting the harsh environment they must withstand. A crucial engine metric is turbine inlet temperature. Generally speaking, every 100 K increase in turbine inlet temperature increases engine thrust by at least 10%, and potentially by over 20%. Therefore, the higher the heat resistance of the fan blades, the higher the turbine inlet temperature they can withstand. How to keep the fan blades strong even at such high temperatures is a challenge for materials researchers worldwide. Therefore, aircraft engine blades are the most difficult materials to prepare and develop. Their high temperature, high pressure, and high strength requirements make them the crown jewel of industry. Lin Xiao's claim to improve their materials' creep resistance by 100% is sheer fantasy. A 100% increase in creep resistance would surely boost the material's high temperature structural strength, along with other properties. Would that be a direct shot at a fan blade material? That would require even more complex experiments, consuming an incalculable amount of time, and ultimately, success wouldn't be certain. Chen Bao had pursued this approach before, but ultimately gave up. Developing such a material requires determination and perseverance, as well as a steady stream of resources. If unsuccessful, even if the government continues to provide resources, who can guarantee that others won't criticize them? This isn't 60 years ago, when the entire nation was working together on the mushroom egg. Hearing Chen Bao's words, Lin Xiao smiled and said, "Just asking." Chen Bao shook his head. Titanium-aluminum alloys might have this potential, but we're definitely not going in the right direction. We need to start with the atomic structure. We're considering single crystal directional solidification for development, but then the funding I'm applying for might have to have 2 or 3 more zeros. Their research budget for this project is already several million yuan. If they add another 2 or 3 zeros, it'll be well into the 9 or 10 figures. However, the development cost of any fighter jet engine isn't just a few hundred million yuan, but tens or even hundreds of billions. Blade materials, as a core component, are not surprising to have R&D costs in the hundreds of millions or even billions. Upon hearing Chen Bao's words, a graduate student nearby asked, "Boss, what's the most expensive project you've ever been involved in?" Chen Bao smiled and said, "The C919, the J35, and the J20. I've participated in the materials research for all of them. Those are all multi-billion-dollar projects." Wow, suddenly, the graduate students present all looked impressed. This is an academician in materials science. Okay, enough, that's all. A hero shouldn't brag about past achievements. Let's get on with our research. Chen Bao waved his hand, looking completely relaxed. Hearing Chen Bao's words, the others nodded and returned to their work. Lin Xiao, on the other hand, stared thoughtfully at the object before him. System, if I ask a question worth 30 truth points or more, can the answer worth 30 truth points be converted into it? The system replied, yes. Lin Xiao nodded slightly. That was fine. Since it could be converted into it when answering questions worth 30 truth points or more, he could add another 14.2 truth points to obtain the model of this new material. However, there was no rush. He could continue his research and, once he achieved some results, meaning when the absolute distance to his ultimate goal had shortened, he could then use truth points to purchase it. Perhaps he could save some truth points then. He smiled faintly and said, "Academician Chen, let's try it now. 7 titanium, 8 aluminum, 1 zirconium." "Yes, let's try it now," Chen Bao replied. Then, the second phase of computational simulation began. Time passed quickly, another 10 days. April arrived, and the temperature gradually warmed up. Around 20 degrees Celsius was just the perfect temperature. Because they had identified a new material, they once again entered the phase of designing the production process for the new material. Lin Xiao had nothing else to do, so he made a rare trip to the Shengjing University campus to enjoy the spring air. "Well, it's been a while since I've had such a comfortable sun." Walking along the shore of Weiming Lake, basking in the sunshine, Lin Xiao squinted his eyes comfortably. It was a pity that he didn't bring Mimi with him, otherwise, sitting on the lawn and petting a ragdoll cat would have been very comfortable. Suddenly, he felt a pat on his back. Turning around, a look of surprise crossed his face. "Hey, Sun Yu, long time no see." Sun Yu was speechless. "Shouldn't I be saying this to you? I actually see you on campus. It seems you haven't forgotten you're from Peking University." Lin Xiao shrugged. "The college allows me to skip classes, so of course I won't." Sun Yu couldn't help but grumble. "You're outrageous. You don't even attend a single class. Not only do you get full marks in math, but you even got a perfect GPA in ideology. I don't know how you managed to learn. A 4.0 GPA, tops the department." Lin Xiao chuckled. "If you count my paper proving the Goldbach conjecture, it would probably be more than 4.0. Sun Yu, you're awesome." It was the same familiar formula, the same familiar flavor. Lin Shen was showing off again. At this moment, a very pretty girl approached Sun Yu. Seeing the girl approaching, Sun Yu immediately put his arm around her shoulders and said to Lin Xiao, "This is my girlfriend, Yu Man, from the physics department." Man, look, let me tell you, Lin Shen and I are good brothers who have won glory for our country together. Hello, Lin Shen." Lin Man also called out to Lin Xiao. "Lin Xiao, where did you find a girlfriend?" "Finding a girlfriend? It's not that simple." "Oh, no, finding a girlfriend is difficult. It's all about putting your heart into it. You have to be good at discovering, and then use your knowledge to win her over, right?" Man, Sun Yu looked at Yu Man. Yu Man lowered her hand, ready to strangle Sun Yu, and nodded with a smile. Then she said to Lin Xiao, "It must be easy for Lin Shen to find a girlfriend. The girls in our physics department are always talking about you. If you want to find a girlfriend, tell me and I'll call them directly." No. Lin Xiao waved his hand. Sun Yu said with a smile, "Master Lin is not like us mortals. Man, don't even think about it, just let him go alone." "Lin Xiao, do you believe that I can find you a girlfriend right away?" "How can I not find a girlfriend when I'm so handsome? By the way, Master Lin, do you want to form another team? Let's participate in the Chu Chengtong mathematical competition, and we will have a guaranteed score in one subject." Sun Yu asked at this time. Lin Xiao waved his hand. "I won't go. I'm participating in a project recently." "Project? Mathematical physics? I remember you and Mr. Yang told me that you were participating in a project in this area." Sun Yu was stunned and asked. "No, that project's finished. Now it's material science. Physics can't stop you, old man. It's just my hobby. As expected, I shouldn't have asked." Sun Yu abandoned his conversation with Lin Xiao and said, "My girlfriend and I are going to go shopping. You can continue to shine for our mathematics community." Lin Xiao chuckled. "Go ahead. I won't bother you anymore. By the way, Yu Man, you have to keep an eye on him. This guy used to share videos of beautiful women with us." With that, he turned and walked away. "Damn it, you're slandering me." Man, don't listen to him. He's slandering me. Just let me see your video viewing history." This. Lin Xiao, already walking away, snorted. "Showing off your girlfriend to me, huh? I'll let you show off. You might as well go home and play with your cat." With that thought, Lin Xiao decided to go back. However, perhaps because everyone felt that today was the same time, Lin Xiao soon ran into another acquaintance. Kong Huan. This was the roommate Lin Xiao had met when he was a member of the National Mathematics training team. His family owned a courtyard house in Beijing. Kong Huan was studying computer science at Peking University. They had met twice since they enrolled, but since then, Kong Huan had acted even busier than him, becoming completely unavailable. Today, seeing each other for the first time, Lin Xiao smiled and said, "Hey, Kong Huan, you've got time to come out for a stroll." Kong Huan was surprised to see Lin Xiao, but perhaps his previously reserved personality hadn't improved. He simply nodded and said, "Yeah, I finished a project, so I came out for a walk." "Have you started working on a project with your advisor?" "Not bad." Lin Xiao nodded. Kong Huan had never touched a computer before, and now, in less than a year, he was working on a project with his advisor. It seemed he had quite a bit of talent. But he had no idea Kong Huan would then say, "It's my own project." Lin Xiao was stunned. "Your own project?" "Yes," Kong Huan nodded. "It's a program that Zunfei outsourced. I took it." He smiled. "I made tens of thousands of yuan." It's my first time making money. Lin Xiao gave him a thumbs up. Awesome. It seemed Kong Huan had found his comfort zone. He might not have shown a great talent for math, but he was now a natural at computers. To be able to secure an outsourced project from a major company like Zunfei in just 1 year was truly astonishing. Then keep up the good work. Maybe you'll be the future leader of computers in China. Kong Huan smiled and said, "You're already a world leader in mathematics." Lin Xiao smiled and waved his hand. "I can't say I'm the leader in mathematics, but there are still many big names in mathematics." "Yeah," Kong Huan nodded, but didn't say anything. Suddenly, he said, "By the way, I made some anti-hacker software. Do you want to use it?" "Anti-hacker software?" Lin Xiao thought for a moment and said, "Okay, send it to me when the time comes so I can try it out." Kong Huan smiled and said, "Okay, there should be another chapter later. The instructor said it can be finalized and normal updates will resume in 2 days." End of this chapter. Thank you very much for reaching the end. Don't forget to like. Looking for more exclusive content and immediate access? Subscribe to our Patreon. Remember, every like, subscription, or donation encourages us to continue. Thanks to everyone. See you in the next video.